All right, back on the record in the Simpson matter. Mr. Simpson is again present before the court with his counsel, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Douglas, Mr. Bailey. People represented by Ms. Clark, Mr. Darden, Ms. Lewis. Jury is not present. Counsel, anything else we need to take up before we invite the jurors to join us? All right. Ms. Clark?
We advise the court in chambers. We had filed a motion this morning requesting that this matter be conducted as a conditional examination on videotape, and we are prepared with the means by which to do so. The reason that we have made this motion, we have not been afforded an opportunity to be heard on whether this would be a conditional examination or in the presence of the jury. And we acknowledge the court's discretion in this matter. Nevertheless, we feel that it would be a...
I thought we had this discussion several times Friday.
No, we did not. We asked for time to consider the option, although our position had been previously consistent that we wanted a conditional examination. We did not want to take the witness out of order in the middle of our case in chief. At the 11th hour yesterday, the court asked us again to reconsider, and we stated that we would consider, but we were never given the option of arguing to the court what our position would be. We considered the matter and determined that we did not want to proceed in the presence of the jury, but we were not afforded an opportunity to be heard in that regard. We were not. We have...
No, we discussed this a half dozen times, counsel.
We discussed it at sidebar at the last opportunity. The court inquired of us, I believe, on Friday, whether the people continued to object to her being called in our case in chief out of order and in the presence of the jury, and we said, yes, we continue to object. Then we went to sidebar at the end of the day, and the court asked whether or not we wanted to have it, the court indicated that we should, whether we wanted to consider having her in the presence of the jury, and we said we were considering that other option. But we have not had an opportunity to present to the court our position on this since that time. And I would like an opportunity to do so. I think that the people's right to a fair trial is substantially endangered by this procedure. Number one, by allowing the witness to be called out of order in the context of the middle of the people's case in chief. This highlights the witness's testimony, affords her undue importance, highlighting her above all other witnesses, which is unfair to the people's case. But beyond that, Your Honor, it's very disruptive. The people will then have to present rebuttal testimony, which is only in its embryonic stages and being formulated. There's a great deal of impeachment against this witness, a great deal, Your Honor. We've been investigating her all along. It's not that we waited till the 11th hour to do so. However, we were always of the belief, and it was a well-founded one, that the ultimate rebuttal would not occur until rebuttal in the people's in the ordinary course of things. That is, that her testimony would be presented in the course of the defense case and that we would be afforded the opportunity to present rebuttal of her testimony after that, when the people's rebuttal began. So there was at least a 2 to 3 month window in which to further develop all the leads. Even this weekend, we've been obtaining substantially new information. To preclude us from getting all of that information and to require us to basically prepare for cross-examination in one weekend and then cross-examine this witness that the defense contends is a key witness for them, on which their whole case hinges, is basically to deprive the people of the opportunity to have an effective right of cross-examination and confrontation. It not only does it rip the fabric of the people's case at a critical point in time, but it also prevents the people from conducting the thorough kind of investigation that we're entitled to conduct with respect to this witness's credibility, which the court is already aware is substantially in question. We ask only that the people's right to a fair trial be preserved by affording the defense the conditional examination that they initially requested. Although the people's position has not changed that the granting of the conditional examination was not required based on the testimony given, that perhaps the 1332 of the Penal Code, a material witness section, would have been appropriate to protect their right to have that witness present. The court...
To incarcerate a witness for 2 months?
No, the witness can post bond. The defense has been giving this witness money, feeding her, clothing her, housing her, paid for round-trip tickets for her. I'm sure they would post bond for her as well. No, she need not be incarcerated. Court's aware of that. Court's also aware of the defense funds and the defense ability to make sure that she can post the bond. That option is available and the people urged the court to take it. Nevertheless, the court ruled that a conditional exam would be afforded to the defense for this witness. All the people are asking now is that the court hold to that ruling and conduct this as a conditional examination so that the people will have the ability to present their case in an orderly fashion, complete the investigation that they've only been given a weekend to speed up.
I thought you said that the prosecution's been long aware of this witness.
The prosecution was aware of this witness and was conducting investigation into this witness. Nevertheless, her lack of credibility was so apparent that we could never have anticipated the defense would hinge their whole case on her. Moreover, the defense has made representations concerning subsequent statements by this witness that we were never made aware of and to this date have no written statement on. We have only counsel's representations in the opening statement as to many of the things she's going to testify to. And I'm sure we're going to hear another version on the witness stand today, whether that be by conditional examination or in front of the jury. But the people's right to a fair trial is in jeopardy here. And I think that there's no detriment suffered by the defense if we present the conditional examination and videotape it. Don't forget, Your Honor, that they will still have her present and available to testify in their case if they want to put her on the witness stand. They will have the option. If they decide that they don't like this witness, they can put it on through videotape or not play the tape at all. If they like this witness and they see that she does a good dress rehearsal, they will have her present for their defense case. And I think that no one should be in any doubt about that. She'll be here. Nevertheless, if we do present the conditional exam, this is a conditional examination, and videotape it, the rights of all sides will be fully preserved. But to rip the people's case and to basically stop the examination and interject a defense witness that will require lengthy cross-examination and lengthy rebuttal pertaining to facts that have not yet been presented even in the people's case will be confusing and misleading to the jury, will curtail the people's right to an effective cross-examination, and will curtail the people's ability to effectively investigate her. And I'm asking the court, in the interest of justice, to allow this as a conditional examination that will protect everyone's rights.
How do you propose to prepare under Evidence Code Section 770, if you haven't already?
I'm sorry?
Well, if you're going to confront her with inconsistent statements, don't you have to do that now during the conditional examination? Are you prepared to do that?
Yes, and I think that, first of all, we can do that by being given broad latitude in cross-examination, which I'm sure the court would afford us, given the unusual nature of these proceedings and the fact that it is a conditional examination. And we can ask those kind of broad, far-reaching questions on cross-examination that will subsume the issues, many of the issues of prior inconsistent statements.
Mr. Cochran?
I thought I would not be amazed anymore, but it's amazing that the court will recall at the end of the day, on Friday, Mr. Darden was saying how he looked forward to having Ms. Lopez before this jury. In fact, he made this statement: I wonder who's going to clean up the blood after I finish the cross-examination. And I welcomed him. I said, well, you go do what you do. We have a truthful witness here. This was litigated, and as always, the people, you know, it's beyond disingenuous for somebody to come into this court at 6:30 after you brought all these jurors over here. We're ready to proceed, and the witness makes a promise to you she'll come back, and they say, well, we can't do it tonight, Judge, because I got to pick up my children. And the court is sensitive to that. And it was a ploy for them to go and try to cry and moan over the weekend and come up with some other document. For Ms. Clark to stand up here and talk about the defense doing this, she doesn't know anything about the defense. If she thinks that our whole case hinges on this witness, then she, like so many people who write about this case, don't know what they're talking about. They're not even part of this case. We have a number of witnesses, all of which they know about. So it's preposterous for them to say that. This is a witness, Your Honor, who's going to be leaving. The court has ruled on this matter. We all come back to court prepared to do this. They're prepared to put it over just till today to proceed. And then all of a sudden we get this motion where all of a sudden they're being prejudiced or whatever. It's the usual thing, Your Honor. And for her to say that our whole case hinges upon this witness is preposterous. We have a number of other witnesses, and they are very much aware of it. And specifically, the court has ruled on this. They agreed to it. We talked about it, as you said, a half dozen times. And when we asked for the delay on Friday night, you look at the transcript, they didn't say, we don't want to have her testify before the jury. They said, we just can't do it tonight because even though Mr. Darden is going to be conducting the examination, Ms. Clark has to be here to see and advise him and tell him what questions to ask. And that was why we put it over. We went through this in detail. And so clearly, Your Honor, this is another attempt by them to avoid facing up to what they have to face up to in this case. And we're ready to proceed. And we should proceed. The court's ruled on this. It's the honorable and fair thing to do. And all the rest of it is wild speculation on their part and totally disingenuous. I'd ask the court to allow us to proceed at this point.
I'm offended as a woman, as a single parent, and as a prosecutor and an officer of the court to hear an argument posed by counsel like that of Mr. Cochran today. Some of us have child care issues, and they are serious, and they are paramount. Obviously, Mr. Cochran cannot understand that, but he should not come before this court and impugn the integrity of someone who does have those considerations. And I'm deeply offended. The people, I would like to indicate the people are strenuous and vigorous in their desire to have this witness testify. We want the ability to fully and effectively cross-examine her. We feel that it would be the fairest thing for both sides to do that in a conditional examination. What the court nor the people could not know on Friday is that new information would be obtained over the weekend, which it has been, that will provide fertile ground for a more effective cross-examination. This information needs to be followed up. It will also afford us the opportunity to present our rebuttal effectively, having gathered all of that information at one time. If we have to present this witness before the jury now, we will be required to present some rebuttal now and then some later in a disjointed fashion. The people have to be able to try their own case, as does the defense. And the order of witnesses is a very important matter that we know the court is aware of. The ability to structure a trial strategy that most effectively conveys the nature of the case and the information that is required to be conveyed to the jury is a very, very important matter. It's not one to be taken lightly. This is why the defense is so desirous of having this witness taken out of order. Even if she doesn't come across effectively, the jury is adequately confused so that her testimony, even though may not be believed, will simply rent the people's case sufficiently to cause confusion and distortion of the people's case. All we want is for the ability to effectively and cohesively present our case to the jury. The defense has already persuaded the court to effect the order of witnesses that the people had proposed on the domestic violence issues. The defense now seeks to do it again, but without good cause, Your Honor. The people submit that there are substantial issues of fairness of this trial, the people's effective ability to cross-examine, and to present the case to this jury that we are being deprived of by having this witness taken out of order. We do feel that everyone's right will be adequately protected by a conditional examination, but please bear in mind, Your Honor, that our investigation of this witness is actively ongoing, has been, but certainly went into high gear over this weekend, and a number of new matters were brought to light. So we would ask that the court take the witness's testimony today, but allow us to do that as a conditional examination. At the appropriate time, if the defense desires to play the tape, they'll have the option of doing so, providing they can show due diligence. But I suspect that the witness will be available to be testifying in person at that time. Either way, it's a no-lose really for the defense, but at least it affords the people the opportunity to present a cohesive case and to effectively investigate and cross-examine this witness.
What's your time estimate, Ms. Clark, for the presentation of the remainder of your case? Realistically now, would you say perhaps the end of March?
And based on what we've seen, the way testimony is going, I have a better feel for the pace. But I need to talk to the people who'll be presenting the blood evidence and the DNA evidence to really give a good idea. So I'm going to give it my best shot, Your Honor. I think that's probably fair, the end of March. I think so. You know, I mean, if you really want me to get more specific and more accurate.
Just sort of a ballpark guess in asking you how much disruption this is, just to put this in context.
We haven't even gotten to, let me help with that. We haven't even gotten to the testimony of the witnesses that make Rosa Lopez relevant. We haven't even gotten that far. We haven't gotten the testimony of Cato. We haven't gotten the testimony of Alan Park. These are the key witnesses that make Rosa Lopez's testimony intelligible. So we are going to wind up rebutting testimony that has not even been, essentially they're putting on their rebuttal before we put on anything directly to make that intelligible to the jury.
All right. Thank you, counsel. Well, certainly make my life interesting every day. I appreciate the fact that both sides anticipated going forward with her testimony before the jury today. The original defense request was for a 1335 conditional examination, which I granted. And after our discussions, I was under the impression that both sides agreed that it would be better under all circumstances than to have Ms. Lopez testify before the jury, since that is the ideal situation. However, the rights of both sides will be protected under the 1335 procedure, so I will modify my order and we'll proceed. Yes, briefly.
Respond to the last thing the counsel said. But, Your Honor, both sides did in fact agree. And the fact that the people have now come in and changed that is, I think it's outrageous, Your Honor. We can never have any closure in this case on anything because they changed their strategy, they changed their mind from day to day, Your Honor. And it seems to me that this would be, the court has not ruled yet, counsel.
Just did, Mr.
Okay.
Parkin.
Well, Your Honor, you had ruled also on Friday night. So they're back up here talking, so I think I should be permitted to at least indicate this.
Well, no, Ms. Clark is correct in that after I made the decision, I told her if she said she wanted to be heard, and then the other issue came up with child care, and then that sort of closed the whole issue for the evening as far as I was concerned. And frankly, since we had been in session 6 hours beyond our anticipated closing time on Friday, I was ready to call it a night then.
I remind the court what happened was Ms. Clark was now gone at this point. The court, we called the jury then at the end of the day and said we'd be calling a witness out of order to testify, and this was a decision. Right. It was a made decision.
You're right.
Everybody in America is looking in, is aware of this was a made decision, and then they come up with this motion that nobody knew about. Darden had agreed to it, and John, I think that's totally unfair. It was unfair
Mr. Cochran,
that they would do this.
I agree with you in many respects. However, you asked for initially a 1335, so you won the day. You got your 1335. Ms. Clark now brings up good points. I'm more than willing to change my mind when I feel it's appropriate.
Well, can we just talk for a moment about her good points? The good points are these, Your Honor.
Well, Mr. Cochran, we've had the opportunity to argue it.
Well, it's just, you know, I would just submit to the court that this is outrageous, that they would be able to come back in and reconvince Your Honor after we made a decision. That you're going to do this on Friday night.
Well, Ms. Clark raises the possibility that if we put on Rosa Lopez now, then they're going to bring on 5 rebuttal witnesses, which is going to totally derail things.
Your Honor, they're always claiming things like that, and it turns out to be much ado about nothing.
That's what I would do if I were them.
Right, but it turns out to be much. So let them do that. I mean, they were going to be so ready to do this. Judge, they've known about this witness since last July or August.
Yeah, excuse me, Mr. Cochran, forgive me for interrupting you for just a second. Ms. Hazlett, would you ask Mr. Schuman to get his gear together for me, please? Thank you.
Your Honor, it seems to me they've known about this witness since last summer. And the fact that we get information, Judge, in this case, this very morning, at this very moment, people are calling in on both sides. It's just totally disingenuous to say we got new information. We get new information minute by minute in this case, and will continue till this case goes to the jury, Your Honor. It's another stall as they did Friday night. And you know, Your Honor has been wise and fair in this case. But certainly you can see through this. And for her to say that I'm not sensitive to child care is preposterous. What I'm sensitive to is the fact that They came in here and said, we're ready to go on Monday, but I just have to be here so I can advise Chris Darden. And now we come with this motion. And that's the thing. So I just wanted to at least have the court indicate how strongly the defense feels about this. I think that I don't want to see this court snookered by this. I mean, this stuff about a fair trial, I mean, it works both ways, Judge. They have the power of the state. They have the entire police department, DA's investigators. They've got everything. They've known about this witness since last summer. And for them to come in here now and say, we're not ready, Judge. I mean, we hear this time and time and time again. And I just think it's unfair because the defendant's entitled to a fair trial also. And the court had made its decision. We live with that decision. And as usual, they come back and begged and moaned and asked you to do something else. And you rightfully consider those things, Judge. But it seems to me in this instance, given this record and what you said, I mean, they affect your credibility. We tell the jurors, we would have done this Friday night. You tell the jurors, we're going to take this witness out of order, come back Monday morning, we're going to do it. Ms. Lopez, who stays over, says, I'll do that for you, Judge. And you say to her, Judge, you say to her, I'll get you on, we'll testify before the jury, and it'll be over with Monday morning, and you can leave if you want.
What she anticipated was coming here and having her testimony tape recorded, which is what we're going to do.
Well, not as of Friday night. She anticipated having it over. What they're arguing, and you know what they're doing, Judge, and let me just say this last thing, and I'll sit down. They're also...
Wait, Ms. Clark.
Judge, what they're doing, again, is seeking to re-argue everything. They're saying, in their motion, when you rule that Rosa Lopez would leave to go to El Salvador, and they don't like a ruling, they try to come and circumvent it by every way they can. So what they're saying now is do this conditional exam because we know she's going to really be available, which is contrary to what you had found the circumstances. So they ask you to re-argue that particular point, Your Honor, and it just seems to me that's unfair. What happened is this case is the strings are being pulled by others that are sitting here at this table, and they come here and make a representation, and they go back and they have to talk upstairs and get their new orders, and then run down here and make these things, these things.
Ms. Clark, please don't interrupt counsel.
And so what you're seeing, Judge, is they want to put you in the middle of their battles upstairs when one person says something, and that's not fair. And that's why you're the judge to make these rulings and make them and stick by them. So I just think we should be able to go forward as we kept. I mean, I think it affects everybody's credibility when we tell jurors something and then all of a sudden they come up with this last-minute attempt. So I'm just saying to the court, you ruled. It was an appropriate ruling, given all the evidence. We should proceed with the testimony. And if they want to call 5 rebuttal witnesses, they've had all the time in the world to do that. They can call anybody they want. They were so worried about whether or not we want to call this witness. We'll make it very clear. Remember, I stood up and I invited him. I said, let's put her before the jury. You're so worried about everything. Everybody around America is worried about Rosa Lopez. We made our decision with regard to that. It's been abundantly clear. You don't see us changing our strategy every few minutes. But where they have. And I just suggest to the court that that's not fair to the defendant when we talk about what's fundamentally fair. And I would ask the court to think about that before you reverse your well-thought-out and well-reasoned ruling.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. All right, counsel, we had not started the actual examination of the witness. What you had asked for was a 1335 conditional examination. I granted that. Since the jury was available, I decided to do that. Since then, the prosecution has brought to my attention a point that I had not contemplated, and since we had not embarked upon that course of action, it's not inappropriate for me to change that, which I'm going to do. We will take a 20-minute recess to allow the videotape equipment to be set up, and we will proceed. And Deputy McNair will need to transport the jury up to the holding lounge upstairs. Mr. Darden.
Your Honor, before we break, I've asked defense counsel, and I've asked on the record as well for any notes and recordings relative to any interview they had with Miss Lopez. I have not received any notes or any recordings of any interview they may have had with her, and I'd like to inquire of defense counsel if any such notes or tape recordings exist.
As far as other than talk, we have no notes and have any recordings. I can inquire with you. I can just call Mr. Paddock. That's the only person I can call.
Well, we understand, Your Honor, that over the weekend, Mr. Schiller, who is apparently Mr. Simpson's personal biographer, spent some time with Ms. Lopez, and I'd like to inquire of Mr. Schiller if he has notes. If he interviewed Ms. Lopez, I'd like those notes, Your Honor.
Is he kidding, Your Honor? That's not bad. Their information is, Your Honor.
If that's a denial, Your Honor,
wait,
that's
wait.
fine.
Mr. Schiller, Your Honor.
Are you indicating, Mr. Cochran, that that's not true?
Of course, I know he didn't talk to him. You got to talk to him.
All right.
That's fine.
All right, very good. Mr. Walsh, you had something?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Douglas has made an ex parte application for an order shortening time. If the court's not going to consider that now, may I be excused?
No, I'm going to consider that now.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Walsh, do you want to address that?
Yes, well, thank you, Your Honor. We received the application this morning indicating that the defense became aware on February 22nd that there may have been certain investigations into allegations against Detective Furman. They're now asking that the court issue an order shortening time till March 2nd to have a hearing on whether those documents, if they exist, should be produced and disclosed. I'm at a loss to understand why they waited until this morning to prepare these documents and file them and give them to me. It's a very short period of time for the city to analyze the request and make a determination of its stature and position that it wants to take. The only reason given in the declaration why an order of shortened time should be allowed is that they believe that Detective Furman is to take a stand on March 1st. I have no information as to whether that's true or not, but March 2nd is an inconvenient date for me for two reasons. One, I have a prior appearance that morning. Second, I have a funeral that I must attend tomorrow, so I would have a limited amount of time to respond to the request and to determine what the city's legal position would be.
How about March 3rd?
March 3rd would be better, Your Honor.
All right, March 3rd,
Thank you. What time?
9 a.m.
Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. All right, Ms. Robertson. Okay, we're going to take a recess to set up the videotape equipment, and we'll resume as soon as the equipment is available. Thank you, counsel.
Okay, can we clear the courtroom flag?
In the Simpson matter, record should reflect that we are about to conduct a conditional examination pursuant to 1335 of the Penal Code, and that the court will be sitting in this matter as a magistrate. All right, Mr. Schuman, are you ready? Mr. Firth, are you ready? All right, Mr. Cochran, you ready?
Yes, let me put you in.
Yes. And is again present with counsel, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Douglas, Mr. Bailey, people represented by Ms. Clark, Mr. Darden, and Ms. Lewis.
I have a matter, Your Honor, I'd like to bring to the court's attention, and it was the subject of some discussions that we had in chambers. Your Honor, as the court is aware, Your Honor, this afternoon or this morning, a document which is a two-page statement written by an investigator and addressed to Mr. Shapiro concerning Rosa Lopez was turned over to the prosecution after having an in-camera review with the court. That was a document that is dated July 29th, 1994. Now, Your Honor, I was under the impression that that document had been turned over to the prosecution consistent with other documents that we had turned over on September the 1st, 1994. Indeed, Your Honor, when we discussed with Ms. Lopez last week the substance of her testimony, we were discussing it within the context of the July 29 document. That document, Your Honor, included reference to an undocumented housekeeper who is named Sylvia, who is acquainted with Ms. Lopez, and who was present on some times that are not critical nor germane to the substance of Ms. Lopez's testimony. Ms. Lopez had expressed severe concern that the Sylvia, and she is not aware of Sylvia's last name, but that Sylvia, since she was undocumented, did not want to have any involvement at all in this particular case and did not want her name mentioned at all in any reports dealing with Ms. Lopez's statement. It was with that context that Mr. Pavlik generated a second document, which was an interview of Ms. Lopez, which occurred, and that document was dated August the 18th, 1994. It is the August the 18th, 1994 document that was turned over to the prosecution. I have, Your Honor, in the interim since this morning, checked with my office to see whether my office had any record or knowledge of the August 18 statement, because it was not among the documents that I used to help discuss Ms. Lopez's testimony with her this past week. And I was told that we did not have the August 18 document in our particular file. I learned about the possibility that such a document existed when I spoke to Mr. Pavlik on Sunday, complaining that Mr. Pavlik had included in his report to the prosecution a name that Ms. Lopez had wanted to not be included. It was then that I learned, and I verified it when I checked my own documents here in court, that in fact there had been a second report, the August 18 report, that was in fact a two-page document of Ms. Lopez, just as the July 29 statement was a two-page document of Ms. Lopez. That is where my confusion was born, such that when I saw that there was a two-page statement of Ms. Lopez, I thought we were talking about the earlier statement, and I was not aware of the existence of the August statement. I anticipate that Ms. Clark will stand before you and express some shock, some outrage, and some sense of prejudice. I would like to say these words in response, however. The August 18th statement that was turned over to the prosecution is more detailed in terms of the germane facts of Ms. Lopez's testimony. There is more inclusion, for example, in the August 18 statement about the circumstances of the June 13 interview between Mr. Furman in the morning and Ms. Lopez. More information was contained in the August 18 statement than was even in the July 29 statement. The August 18 statement was created simply to assuage Ms. Lopez's concerns that her undocumented friend, who did not want any involvement in this case, might come forward, her name might be released, and she might then be interviewed or some way involved in this case. However, Ms. Lopez told me, and told Mr. Cochran when we were discussing that statement, that she had had subsequent conversations with this Sylvia, and that Sylvia had in fact been interviewed by Los Angeles Police Department officers months ago. That Sylvia in that interview had denied any acquaintanceship with Ms. Lopez, knew her only briefly, and did not have any information to lend to anything concerning this case, which was consistent with the statement that Sylvia told Ms. Lopez that Sylvia did not want to have any involvement in this case and would deny any subsequent involvement in the case were she to be asked about it. Therefore, Your Honor, if there is some claim that there is some surprise, that there is some prejudice, I think that you should inquire whether or not this Sylvia person has ever been known to the prosecution, whether or not the Sylvia person had ever been interviewed by the prosecution, and she was in fact interviewed, as I said, months ago. Her relevant involvement in this particular case is not germane to the substance of Ms. Lopez's statement that sometime after 10 o'clock she went outside walking her dog and saw Mr. Simpson's Bronco in a location identical to where she had seen that Bronco earlier in the evening. The only context with which the Sylvia information has any sort of relevance is to explain why at approximately 8 o'clock Ms. Lopez was outside waiting for Sylvia to come over, and thereby saw Mr. Simpson's Bronco parked in the same position as it was parked later after 10 o'clock, and why sometime after 9 or 9:15, Ms. Lopez was outside to see Mr. Simpson leave and to notice that he had left in his Rolls Royce with another man who we now know was Cato Kalin when they went to go get a hamburger. The statement in August includes mention of Ms. Lopez being outside at 10 o'clock and seeing the Bronco, includes mention of Ms. Lopez seeing Mr. Simpson leave in his Bentley after 9 o'clock with an unknown person, and then learning that there was some hard-soled shoes walking down Mr. Simpson's property about 20 to 30 minutes after he had left to McDonald's.
Excuse me. If Ms. Lopez is here, can we have her step outside?
Mrs. Hamburg, why don't you and your client step outside while we're discussing your client's potential testimony, please? Thank you. Please wait in the hallway. Thank you, counsel.
But, Your Honor, any involvement or any mention of Sylvia or any relevance to anything that she may offer is really collateral and tangential to the substance of Ms. Lopez's testimony. The statement that we gave in August is more complete as to what Ms. Lopez will testify to than the statement that was in July. The prejudice, if any, is minimized because the people have already interviewed this Sylvia. The people have a statement, I would assume, although I have never seen any reports of the interview of Sylvia, but Sylvia told Ms. Lopez that, in fact, she was interviewed by detectives or police officers shortly after the incident occurred months ago. And therefore, Your Honor, I think that, yes, there was a problem because a two-page report that predates the report that was turned over was not actually turned over. However, the report that was turned over is more complete in terms of the testimony that Ms. Lopez will give in this trial. And the reason why the second report was created was simply to protect the identity of an undocumented worker who did not want to have her name mentioned or to be involved in a case of this sort of profile. I'm also reminded, Your Honor, that we, upon learning, and this morning when we were looking at the documents that we turned over to the prosecution, learned for the first time that, in fact, to our surprise, the July 29 statement was not the one that had been turned over, but it was this August 18 statement, and that was then the reason for the added delay while we brought that up to the court and then voluntarily turned that document over to the prosecution.
Ms. Clark? Certainly.
I feel like I'm experiencing deja vu
All over again.
all over again. That's right. Mr. Douglas stands before the court once again to fall on his sword. I guess he's elected to do that. That's his job in this trial. I'm not impressed. I think that these representations by counsel are unavailing to alleviate the problem that they have created by willfully failing to disclose material statements. This July 29th statement is not only, counsel wants to represent to us that the August 18th statement was more detailed and had more relevant information than the July 29th statement. When I went through and compared the two statements, what I found was that actually, in most relevant respects, the July 29th statement was far more detailed. And there was one obvious omission in that July 29th statement, and that is that at 10:15 to 10:20, on July 29th, Rosa Lopez said she went out to walk the dog and made no mention of seeing the Bronco at all. That statement is totally absent from the July 29th statement. Only on the August 18th statement does it state that she went out to walk the dog at 10:15 to 10:20 and saw the Bronco. Obviously, we have some material discrepancies of a very important nature. Discrepancies that we should have been informed of quite a long time ago. Discrepancies that would have allowed us to address Ms. Lopez in a far different manner. With respect to the greater detail in the August 18th statement, let me point out that it was only the July 29th statement when she made mention of what kind of shoes she was adamant the prowler was wearing. August 18th says nothing about that. The information concerning Detective Mark Furman in the July 29th statement is no different. In fact, it states that it was conclusively Detective Mark Furman she spoke to, whereas in the August 18th statement it says that he was subsequently identified as Mark Furman. And lest there be any mistake made here, Your Honor, the August 18th statement makes no mention of a July 29th interview, and the August 18th statement states specifically that it is not an edited version of a prior statement, but it was a statement generated by Rosa Lopez on August 18th. So we have not only willful failure to disclose the July 29th statement by their late presentation today, but we also have a deliberate material misrepresentation implicit in the August 18th statement, in which it purports to have interviewed her once and only once, and that was on August 18th, deliberately misrepresenting and misleading the people to believe that there was only one interview. Now, what makes that an even more gross lie is that both statements were taken by the same investigator, Bill Pavlik, given to the same attorney, Robert Shapiro. Obviously, counsel knew, obviously Pavlik knew that there was a prior statement, and there's no mention of that. This is a material misrepresentation in and of itself. And as officers of the court, they should be ashamed. They should be embarrassed. In fact, their bar tickets should be hanging in jeopardy at this point for this kind of misconduct. And this is misconduct. There's no question about it. The question is what the court wants to do about it. It's another issue. But I am appalled. I am appalled as an officer of this court that these kind of misrepresentations would be propounded in the manner that they are, with these sanctimonious denials and claims of being fair-minded and open-handed and forgetting that there was supposedly a witness who would corroborate at least some aspect of Rosa Lopez's statement. Obviously, Rosa Lopez put this person into her July 29th statement for the express purpose of showing how credible she was. And when the defense found out that Sylvia was not only not going to corroborate Ms. Lopez, but was going to say she's a liar and no such thing ever happened, and I wasn't at her house, and I did not make an observation of the Bronco, she conveniently disappeared from the statement. That's the truth. All we knew, and counsel wants now to point the finger at us to try and put us on the defensive after their misconduct, which is reprehensible in itself. I would like for the court to know what that situation was. What happened is that we received a clue to talk to a maid named Sylvia, who said that Rosa sold her story for $5,000. And that's what we did. We interviewed a maid named Sylvia, who lived close to the Rockingham address of the defendant, and she denied having spoken to Rosa. She denied having any close relationship with Rosa Lopez. She denied having any knowledge of the case at all. She said she did know Rosa, but having ridden the bus with her a couple times, and that's all she knew. And so there was nothing to generate, because all we did was follow up a clue that wound up being, I have no information. We had no idea, because of the defense misconduct, that Sylvia was somebody who had some material information, Rosa Lopez claimed. And so all we were doing was following up a tip that didn't pan out. Had we known that Rosa Lopez made this statement on July 29th, claiming to have visited, and now the defense wants to downplay her importance, and they want to downplay her importance in order to, this is going to be how they cover up, how they explain away, yet another way we're going to expose Rosa Lopez as a liar. This is, now we've got their cover story. The court's heard it. That this woman doesn't want to get involved and she's an illegal alien. Illegal aliens tell the truth too, Your Honor. And I'm sure that Sylvia will tell the truth if asked, whether or not she was with Rosa Lopez that night. But obviously, she becomes a source of impeachment material.
All right, two questions then, Ms. Clark. Are we confident in our determination that the Sylvia mentioned in the report from July is the same Sylvia that the tip was followed up on?
We have no way of knowing that. Because the defense hid this report from us, we have no way of knowing it this time. We're going to attempt to find out.
Okay. Second question. Although from Mr. Douglas's comment, I take that to mean that apparently it's the same person.
It would seem they are saying so.
All right.
Yeah, Your Honor?
Sure.
I also would like to point out to the court that we have an inconsistency even among defense counsel.
Ms. Clark, I just had two questions.
I'm sorry.
Let me pose my questions to you. I just wanted to see what your level of confidence was in that Sylvia is the same Sylvia. You seem to have a fair degree of confidence that we're talking about the same person. Secondly, my second question, let's assume that I agree with you that this is a delay in discovery that is substantial and should not have occurred, especially in light of what transpired earlier, calling upon your first observation that this is deja vu all over again. What sanction, if any, do you seek at this point, since that's really the bottom line
Yes.
of our discussion, I assume?
Okay. Let me address the points seriatim. Number one, only hearing Mr. Douglas's statements now did I gain that confidence. Prior to coming down to court and hearing him make those statements, I didn't. I wasn't sure. I asked the investigator.
During the course of cross-examination of Ms. Lopez, assuming we go forward today, we can flesh out who she is
I'm assuming that.
and then confront her with any contrary views expressed by Sylvia, quote unquote.
Right. Of course, thanks to defense counsel's misconduct, we are going to be doing that in the blind. And as we all know, lawyers should not be asking questions on cross-examination for which they do not have answers. And what counsel has deliberately done is forced us to do that very thing. So, number one thing, I want to point out to the court on how many occasions in the past we have asked for the notes, tapes, prior to other statements of this witness, specifically this witness. We have requested them. They were denied to us. This morning, Mr. Cochran came in and told the court that he first learned of this other statement today. And now Mr. Douglas tells us he knew about it all along. We have inconsistencies between counsel. And we now have to race the tabloids in order to find out where this Sylvia is, who she is, and what she'll have to say. I mean, really, we are put behind the eight ball in a very serious way. And Mr. Douglas's elaborate dance doesn't cloud the fact that we're put behind the eight ball with this. I think that here's what I think would be the fairest thing is to preclude counsel from using this as a prior consistent statement, which is in any case, legally it doesn't amount to a prior consistent statement that would be admissible for corroboration, because it does not arise at a time prior to the genesis of the bias. But in any case, if they were attempt to use it in any form, it should not be admissible as a prior consistent statement. Furthermore, Yes. Furthermore, they should be precluded from ever calling Sylvia. And we should be permitted to cross-examine on this July 29th statement at our discretion. We would further ask the court to admonish the jury that we have a willful and intentional disobedience of the court order in the delaying tactic of the defense in turning over this report, which delaying tactic was engaged in for the purpose of gaining a tactical advantage in the case and taking the people by surprise, and in an effort to curtail their effective cross-examination of Rosa Lopez. And I'm reminded that perhaps this would be the time, Your Honor, to lift the discovery sanctions imposed upon us some 2 months ago.
With domestic violence all over again, wouldn't we?
Revisit, yes. But at least that would allow us to present witnesses and try the case in the manner that we had, closer to the manner in which we had anticipated doing. It's now been 2 months. Counsel was afforded the opportunity to investigate those witnesses. Now they have had all of the time that the court deemed appropriate. I think the court said 6 weeks. It's been longer than that. And we should be permitted, I think, at this time, to be able to put those witnesses on.
So as I understand you correctly, then your position is that you want me to restrict or prevent the defense from using the July 29th statement as a prior consistent statement, should that come up. You want me to preclude the use of Sylvia as a defense witness.
That's correct.
You want me to give an instruction to the jury regarding another violation of the discovery rules, and you want me to lift the previous sanction regarding the witnesses that were belatedly disclosed by the prosecution, correct? All right.
Which I'd like to underline one thing to the court. When we say belated in the People's case, there was a 2 to 3 week delay. We're not talking, the defense delay is more like an ice age compared to that. You know, I mean, we're talking 8 months, Your Honor, 8 months that they sat on a statement that at least one of them knew they had. A statement that was prepared by the very same investigator who prepared the August 18th statement. I mean, this is so obviously willful. This is so obviously intentional, a disobedience of the court's order, that I am shocked. I am shocked. I have never seen a defense attorney behave this way. I have never seen this happen. You know, I've heard of delays. I've heard of refusal to take statements. I've heard of a lot of things. But I've never seen this. And I've never seen it in such a blatant form in an effort to sandbag the prosecution, to blindside us. You know, they're obviously very desperate, you know, to engage in such obvious tactics, but they should be unavailing. You know, after the repeated requests by the prosecution for notes, tapes, and other reports on witnesses, and particularly this one, and the denials of defense counsel that any such thing existed, only to have the 11th hour report come out,
Well, counsel,
I'd ask that...
Let me tell you what concerns me the most about that. Having said all that, and forgive me for interrupting you, but a more pertinent point is that after we had that last episode, I then directed defense counsel to go through and make an inventory of all the witnesses and statements, because I wanted to avoid specifically what we have here. That's what concerns me more than what you just mentioned.
Right, right. And because I was not charged with the responsibility of compiling the inventory, the pain of that effort caused me to forget that the court had made that order, and that makes it even worse. That's right. Because God, who knows what else they have? Who knows what else they're sitting on? So I would ask the court for this. I would like their investigators to come into court and divulge to us all of the reports and notes and statements that they have taken on the relevant defense witnesses that we will designate, so that we can get a complete and accurate idea of what else they've got that they have not turned over. Because I think we have not seen the end of this.
All right.
We need Rose's notes, by the way. We know that she's been extensively interviewed by counsel. I cannot believe for 1 minute that there was no note taken, no tape made of any statement that she gave, especially over this last weekend. So, I mean, there are considerable notes and statements that exist on this witness that we have not been shown. And the defense counsel, if they want to get up and deny it again, we're going to revisit the issue again. But I would hope that the court's sanctions would be much more draconian. And I would ask that before we proceed, we hear from these investigators. I want to see, I think the court should see what else they've got. And I don't know if we'll ever find out, but we can try.
Mr. Douglas?
A couple things come to mind, Your Honor. There are a few occasions in court where I felt as bad as back in January when I had to suffer the slings and arrows for things that occurred. Therefore, Your Honor, I would not willingly or intentionally thrust the defense into a position where I find myself again having to explain something such as this. When the court admonished defense counsel to seriously and cautiously review the discovery and to create a book and to set forth all of the documentation, I did that and I complied with the court's direction in that regard. There was, Your Honor, in my records, a 2-page interview from William Pavlik to Robert Shapiro concerning Rosa Lopez. I then checked off that consistent with a 2-page interview from William Pavlik to Robert Shapiro that had been turned over to the prosecution. It was only this morning, Your Honor, that I saw for the first time that the 2-page interview that we had given to the prosecution was not the same 2-page interview that I had been using in my notes. Your Honor, I stand before this court as an officer of the court to tell you that I never had in my possession the August 18th statement until I went back at direction of Mr. Cochran and checked to see what document it was that had been given.
Mr. Douglas, let me direct your attention to one other thing that I'm more interested in. Let's assume that we both agree, however, that this is a late disclosure, because there is some difference, significant difference between these two statements. So you and I both have to agree that the disclosure is late in coming, correct?
Your Honor.
All right. Putting aside the explanation as to how that happened, the prosecution has asked for 4 sanctions as a result of this. What's your response to their request for these 4 sanctions?
I do not think, Your Honor, that it justifies bringing in investigators and having investigators share intimate attorney-client work product with the prosecution. There are no notes that have not been turned over. There are no tape-recorded statements of Ms. Lopez. I'm not sure, Your Honor, how the prosecution speaks to a witness that they are going to call when there are attorneys present. We sit in a conference room and basically discuss questions that will be asked, answers that are going to be given, but we're not taking down notes such that it would be the kind of thing that they're talking about. So I'm not sure what they are talking about. There is no tape recording of Ms. Lopez by any of our investigators. We turned over, Your Honor, the July 29, 1994 statement.
Mr. Douglas, that's really another question that you're addressing. I want you to address the 4 specific sanctions that the prosecution has asked for in light of the delay in disclosure. The other issue as to whether or not we're going to talk to Mr. Pavlik or the other investigators to ask them to disgorge anything else that they might have as to any other witnesses, that's interesting. That's something we'll take up at a later time. I'm more interested in getting your response to these 4 requests.
Very well, Your Honor. Can you remind what the 4 were?
Number 1 was that you be precluded from using the July 29th statement as a prior consistent statement. Number 2, that you be precluded from using Sylvia, quote unquote, as a defense witness. Number 3, that the court give an instruction to the jury that there's been a willful failure to disclose the prior statement of Rosa Lopez to the jury. And 4thly, that the court lift its previous sanction on the prosecution for their delay in disclosure and allow them to now present the witnesses that were late in being disclosed.
I think, Your Honor, I will answer this question, and I think the court should understand some context so that you could weigh the appropriateness of any particular sanctions. What we are doing is creating a conditional examination record that the defendant will use in his case, now we're learning, will come at a minimum of 6 weeks from now, if not longer. If there is the court's position that some sort of a sanction would be appropriate because there may be some measure of prejudice with the people being unable to specifically question this Sylvia, and we have not interviewed Sylvia, Your Honor, we have not contacted her. I'd like to make that clear as well. I think that the appropriate sanction would be consistent with that which was imposed on the prosecution. That is, creating some time frame within which the defense would be barred from offering that videotape until there has been a showing that the people have had an adequate opportunity to investigate this Sylvia, to obtain a subsequent statement from her, and are now adequately prepared to rebut anything that may have been said about Sylvia in Ms. Lopez's statement. It is important to remember, Your Honor, that we are not intending to bring any circumstances of Sylvia's involvement in our case through the testimony of Ms. Lopez. Our entire testimony is going to be based on that which is included in the August 18, 1994 statement, which is why I say that statement is more complete for the purposes of her testimony than even the statement from July 1994. I do not think, Your Honor, that it would be proper to preclude Sylvia from being called as a defense witness, because I think that would be a premature ruling at this point. It may be that she will have nothing that we are going to offer in corroboration of Ms. Lopez. It may be that she will. I would urge the court to withhold that particular consideration of the sanction until we get to that point, and to require that we would be obligated to inform the court beforehand. This Sylvia is not on our witness list. We have no document from Sylvia. I cannot represent to the court that there is even a present intention to call Sylvia in any regard. I suspect, because she is undocumented, that she is not going to be very interested in involving herself in a case of this profile, and I suspect that we would not anticipate calling her as a witness, but I do not think it be prudent at this point to commit to that particular sanction. As to the final sanction, that is, that they should now be relieved of their obligations, the court has always made it clear that we can't confuse apples and oranges. The court imposed a sanction that the court thought was well-fashioned and well-based. Given that record, I would urge the court to impose a sanction that is similar given this particular record, and that is the advantage that we have now of having a conditional examination. She is not going to be testifying in front of the jury. It is not, for example, a situation where prior to her going away for the day, after her direct has already been placed in front of the jury, we now say, oh, by the way, we have this statement. When we learned about this statement, when we learned that they were different, we then first brought it to the court's attention to see, for the court preliminarily to rule whether or not there was an obligation to release the statement. Certainly, Your Honor, I understand and appreciate the scorn that would befall me for explaining the circumstances of this. But this was not intentional, Your Honor. It was not willful, and certainly this court has had some ability to gauge the nature of the defense effort, understanding that it is very much a monumental effort. But this was a matter that we brought to the court's attention before the witness was called to testify. And I do think, Your Honor, when the court is trying to balance and to interpret and to read between the lines, there should be some understanding place that the defendant did in fact come forward with this evidence, this information, and offered an explanation to explain it, though certainly not just a justification that the name was in fact missed. I do think, Your Honor, as well, that it would be totally improper, given the current state and where we are, for the court to issue an instruction to the jury that there has been some further willful misconduct. The reason why the court felt it appropriate earlier to issue a curative instruction was because there had been statements made concerning Mary Ann Gertjes to the jury, and the court realized that we could not unring the bell. There has not been anything said about any Sylvia, any mention to the jury at all of any connection that she may have. Her connection at best is only tangential and is not one that we intend to elicit on direct examination. So I do not think that there is a showing that we have in any way taken advantage of this slip as the showing that was made in the earlier example, which then in the court's mind justified the imposition of that sanction.
Thank you, Counselor. All right,
Now, we have point taken out to the court?
one thing.
Okay. I find it very, very impossible to believe that the defense did not follow up to interview a potentially corroborating witness for someone who is their key alibi witness. And Mr. Douglas's efforts to convince this court to minimize the importance of Sylvia to the defense should not be accepted on face value. It's clear that she is somebody that they would like to rely on and probably did interview and rejected because she dumped Rosa Lopez out as being a liar. And I'd like to point out to the court that the defense came forward this morning only after it realized in fear that once Ms. Lopez was cross-examined about how many times she spoke to their investigators and when, that their subterfuge was going to be exposed. Had we done the conditional exam on Friday night, Your Honor, she would have been here and gone, and we would never have realized that there was another statement given by her. So the prejudice could have been severe.
Tired.
Pardon?
Never mind. All right, then I take it, Ms. Clark, that since you were asking for these various sanctions, Mr. Douglas is correct that I need not impose any of these sanctions except for the one lifting your order of proof unless and until the defense chooses to present Rosa Lopez's 1335 statement, correct? I mean, I think you agree with that timing-wise. All right, then I would propose that we go forward then with the 1335 with Rosa Lopez at this time.
There's only one thing that I would request at this time, Your Honor, and that is that the investigators be brought into court and required to divulge the information with respect to any other notes, reports, or interviews taken.
All right, we can take that up later, but I would like to get the 1335 in the can, so to speak, if we can do that.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
I would like to get the 1330. We will take that issue up, whether or not there is any, because what has transpired obviously causes me some curiosity and concern as to whether or not there's anything more out there that we ought to know about. I agree with you there. But I would prefer to use our time today getting the 1335 in the can.
The problem is that we're talking about our right to cross-examine this witness. If there are other reports and notes of her made by the investigators, we obviously need to know about that before we cross-examine her.
Well, the representation that's been made by Mr. Douglas is that there are no such other reports.
Which has been made
And
before, specifically with regard to this witness. So, and this morning. That was, Mr. Darden came into court and requested any other notes or reports, and we were given a very assured, confident statement that there was nothing else, only to be confronted at the 11th hour with this other statement that came floating out. So I don't think we can
All
accept
right, so you'd
counsel's.
be satisfied with Mr. Pavlik coming in and telling us on the record that that's all there is?
Under oath, yeah. The other sanction that would be applicable to the conditional examination, Your Honor, is the use or mention of any of the statements contained in the July 29th statement. Any reference to those as a prior consistent statement.
I would say this, though, Ms. Clark, that we can go forward with a rather broad range during the 1335, because that is a statement that will not be offered unless until I find there's good cause, and it's still subject to editing for objections and other sanctions. Mm-hmm. I think because I have the impression that you would like to cross-examine her on the July 29th.
That may be true. Especially in light of the fact she doesn't see a Bronco.
If you cross-examine on it, then they are entitled to go back and reestablish the complete statement of what's there. Mm-hmm. Now, whether or not that comes in before the jury is another question. Mm-hmm. But if it's in the can, at least I know it's there.
Okay. Okay, then what about the...
All right, but I will ask Mr. Pavlik to come in and to respond to the question whether or not there are any other items. with regards.
Is that the only, or Mr. McNally as well, Your Honor? We have.
I don't believe Mr. McNally is employed by the defense any longer.
He's referred to in the August 18th statement as one of the
I
interviewers.
don't believe he's here, and I don't believe he's in the employ of the defense any longer.
No, McKenna. That's McKenna. That's McKenna. Is there any way, I'm sorry, but is there any way that we can get some kind of statement from the defense concerning Mr. McNally's notes and who they were turned over to? Perhaps Mr. Pavlik's in possession of them? Obviously, he was engaged by the
Well,
defense back at the...
Why don't we just, let's ask Mr. Douglas, is Mr. Pavlik available?
He can be available, Your Honor, yes.
Well, I'm going to propose a modification to our court schedule today to go to 4:30 since we're getting such a late start. Any objections?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor, except that we want to hear from Mr. Pavlik before we begin cross.
All right, well, let's get the direct, and Mr. Shapiro, would you make a phone call to Mr. Pavlik, have him come to court forthwith, and we'll commence with the direct examination, and I'll take a recess between the direct and the cross-examination so that we can address the Pavlik issue. But I would like to get started with this.
One thing, Your Honor, I'd like to record be clear is we have not interviewed this person known as Sylvia. We do not know
I got
her.
that the first time.
Well, Your Honor, the suggestion that I'm lying when I say that offends me. So I want to make
Well,
sure that it's
Mr.
clear.
Douglas, let's be very clear. I have not imposed any sanctions yet.
Yes, Your
I
Honor.
haven't made any findings yet, so let's not get too excited at this point. But I am concerned for the reason I mentioned. Thank you. All right, Mr. Schuman, Mr. Firth, are we ready? All right, Mr. Cochran, I'm sorry. 2 minutes. 2 minutes? I'll stay here so we don't all have to go out and come back in. No, we'll take one break. Let me know, though. And Madam Interpreter, do you let me know if you need a break? All right. And Mrs. Robertson, let's get the interpreter a glass of water, please. About a quarter after 3, we'll change the quarter.
Rosa Maria Lopez.
All right, good afternoon, Ms. Lopez.
Buenas tardes.
Thank you
Good
for
afternoon,
staying.
Mayor.
Mr. Cochran.
Thank you very kindly. Good afternoon, Ms. Lopez.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Lopez, where were you born?
En El Salvador. ¿A dónde nació usted? En El Salvador. En El Salvador.
And what is your native language?
¿Cuál es su lengua madre? Español. Spanish.
And do you understand and speak some English?
¿Y usted entiende y habla un poco de inglés? Just a little.
And in the course of your examination here today, would you prefer to speak with us in Spanish or English?
Y en el transcurso de este interrogatorio el día de hoy prefiere hablar inglés o español. Español. Spanish.
Now, you described for us that you were born in El Salvador. How far did you go in school in El Salvador?
Usted nos dijo que
That's very relevant, true.
Oh, you can answer the question.
usted dijo que nació en El Salvador. ¿Hasta qué grado llegó en la escuela? Cuarto año. Fourth grade.
And did you attend all of those 4 years?
¿Y usted asistió a la escuela todos esos años?
No,
No.
And why was it that you quit school after only 4 years, or part of 4 years?
Overruled.
¿Y por qué es que usted dejó la escuela después de los 4 años?
porque mis padres eran muy pobres y no tenían para comprarme cuadernos ni lápiz.
Because my parents were very poor and they didn't have any to buy me books, notebooks and pencils.
How old were you when you quit school?
¿Cuántos años tenía usted cuando dejó
Overruled.
de ir al colegio, a la escuela?
10 años, digo yo.
I would say 10 years old.
And did you start working at 10 years of age?
Sustain.
At what age did you start to work?
Overruled.
¿Y cuántos años ha tenido usted cuando empezó a trabajar?
De los 9 años en adelante trabajé.
I worked after, from 9 years old on.
And what kind of work were you doing at 9 years old?
¿Y qué clase de trabajo?
Overruled.
¿Y qué clase de trabajo hacía usted?
En el campo con mis padres,
On the field.
sembrar la milpa, los frijoles, el maíz.
On the field with my parents, I would plant corn, beans, and rice.
And this was in what country?
¿Y eso fue en qué país?
En El Salvador.
In El Salvador.
How many children, how many brothers and sisters did you have, Ms. Lopez?
Overruled.
¿Cuántos hermanos y hermanas pues tiene usted?
6 hembras y 4 varones.
6 girls and 4 boys.
Just so council's aware, because this is a 1335 and not being able to predict the scope entirely at this point, I'm going to be rather broad as far as relevancy is concerned, but understanding that when it comes to the offer of the conditional examination before the trier of fact, it'll be edited if I find certain areas to be irrelevant. But since we're talking about something that is being preserved, in essence, I'm going to be rather broad in relevance, just to let you know.
My only concern at this point is that if I fail to object at this time, the court consider that a waiver at 11
No.
point.
No.
No?
No. I'll take your standing objection to background as, I'll take it as a standing objection to background questions. Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you. Of the 10 children, how did you fall? Were you the youngest, the oldest, or what?
De los 10 hijos, ¿verdad? De los 10 hermanos. ¿En qué lugar queda usted? ¿Era la mayor, la menor o cómo?
En medio.
In the middle.
Now, when you attended school, how far was school from your home?
Cuando usted asistía a la escuela, ¿a qué distancia de su casa quedaba la
This is
escuela?
pretty far afoot.
This is the last question that's here.
Okay.
A 3 millas.
Can I give the answer?
Yes,
I
please.
did. 3 miles away.
And how would you get to school each day?
¿Y cómo llegaba usted hasta la escuela todos los días?
Caminando.
Walking.
Now, once you started to work, as you've indicated, I guess at 9 or 10 years of age, how many years have you worked in your life?
Desde que usted empezó a trabajar, como dice que ha trabajado desde los 9 años, ¿cuántos años ha trabajado usted en su vida?
50 años.
About 50 years.
So from the time you quit school, have you continued to work up until today's date,
O sea, del
until
día,
1995?
Overruled.
o sea, desde que el día usted dejó de estudiar, ¿ha continuado usted trabajando hasta este año de 1995?
Sí.
Yes.
Now, at some point, you left El Salvador and you came to the United States, is that correct?
Llegó el momento en que usted salió del Salvador y se vino a los Estados Unidos, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Yes.
And when was that?
¿Y cuándo fue eso?
En 1969.
In 1969.
And have you continued to live in the United States since 1969?
¿Y usted ha vivido continuamente en los Estados Unidos desde 1969?
Sí.
Yes.
And have you returned to El Salvador during that period of time, during the last 25 or 26 years?
¿Y usted ha vuelto a El Salvador durante ese periodo de tiempo, es decir, en los últimos 25, 26 años?
Sí.
Yes.
And do you own any land or property in El Salvador?
¿Y usted es dueña de alguna de terreno o propiedades en El Salvador?
De la casa que me dejó mi hijo.
The house my son left me.
Now, with regard to your son, how many children have you had in your life, Ms. Lopez?
Hablando de su hijo, ¿cuántos hijos ha tenido usted?
7.
7.
And did all 7 of those children survive childbirth?
¿Y sus 7 hijos sobrevivieron el nacimiento?
I'm going to link it up with regard to the children who live
Please.
there.
I didn't hear the ruling of the court.
No, she can answer the question.
Puede contestar la pregunta. ¿Cuántos de esos 7 hijos sobrevivieron el nacimiento?
Solamente 4 viven.
Only 4 living.
All right, and of the 4 children who I guess survived childbirth, how many of those children are alive now?
Y de los 4 hijos que sobrevivieron el nacimiento, que nacieron, ¿cuántos de ellos están vivos todavía?
Solamente 2.
Only 2.
And what happened to the other 2 children?
¿Y qué pasó? ¿Qué le pasó a los otros 2 hijos?
Me lo mataron. La niña que tenía 15 años se desapareció y no le he vuelto a saber de ella para nada cuando empezó la guerra.
They killed him. The 15-year-old girl that I don't know what happened to her since the war.
Y mi hijo era piloto aviador y me lo mataron los guerrilleros, lo derribaron del aeropuerto.
And my son was a pilot. He was a flyer, and the guerrillas shot him down.
Is he a helicopter pilot of some kind?
Él era piloto de helicóptero de alguna clase.
Sí, era teniente.
Yes, he was a lieutenant.
And there is a war that's been going on for some time in your country?
Y hay una guerra que ha estado pues ocurriendo por algún tiempo ya en su país.
Sí.
Yes.
With regard to the 4 children, when you came to the United States in 1969, did you bring all 4 of the children here?
Hablando de sus hijos, cuando vino a los Estados Unidos en 1969, ¿trajo sus 4 hijos para acá?
No solo me traje 2.
No, I only brought 2.
And are those 2 children still here now, living in the United States now?
Y esos 2 hijos todavía viven aquí, están viviendo en los Estados Unidos ahora actualmente.
Sí.
Yes.
And the other 2 who lost their lives remained in El Salvador?
Y los otros 2 que perdieron sus vidas permanecieron en El Salvador.
Sí.
Yes.
Now, with regard to your son who was killed as a helicopter pilot, do you have some plans with regard to him and his burial? Oh, well,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Did you
sorry.
have...
Yes, as regards your son, the helicopter pilot who was killed in the war, do you have some plans regarding his burial?
Hablando de su hijo, el que era piloto de helicóptero, que fue muerto en El Salvador, ¿tiene usted algo planeado o tiene planes usted concerniente a su entierro?
Ponerle su tumba y hacerla como él me la pidió, de ponerle su tumba militar y un helicóptero y su nombre y todo, porque no está así, que no tuve el tiempo de ponérsela.
Well, to do as he asked me to do, is to buy him a tomb and put his name on it and buy him a helicopter and like as he asked me, because I never had time to do so.
Was that word tomb? Did you say tomb?
Dijo tumba.
Tumba, sí.
And the
Tomb,
helicopter
yes.
that you would purchase, is this a full-size helicopter? Describe the helicopter you
Y
would
el
purchase.
helicóptero que le va a comprar o que le va a poner, describa este helicóptero. ¿Es un helicóptero de tamaño normal o descríbalo?
Es en la Fuerza Aérea, los mismos compañeros de mi hijo les hacen su helicóptero de metal pequeño para decorar su bóveda.
His co-workers at the Air Force have make a small metal helicopter for him to decorate his tomb.
All right. Once you came to the United States, after a period of time, did you become a resident alien? Did you become documented at some point?
Después de que usted vino, después de un tiempo de haber venido a los Estados Unidos, ¿usted se hizo residente legal? ¿Extranjera residente legal? Yes.
And when was that, if you recall?
¿Cuándo fue eso, si usted recuerda?
No me recuerdo específicamente, no me recuerdo, pero parece que fue el 88, no estoy muy seguro, 88, 89.
I don't remember specifically, but I think it was 88 or 89.
Now, you described for us earlier that when you first started working at 9 or 10 years of age, you worked in the fields. And when you lived in El Salvador, is that always the kind of work you did? Did you work in the fields or did you do some other kind of work?
Usted dijo que ha estado trabajando desde que tenía 9 y 10 años de edad y siempre fue en los campos, ¿verdad? ¿Ese fue el trabajo que usted hacía siempre cuando estaba en El Salvador, el trabajo de campo, o hacía otra cosa?
No, trabajé de housekeeper.
No, I work as a housekeeper.
And for how many years in El Salvador did you work as a housekeeper?
¿Por cuántos años en El Salvador es que usted trabajó de la casa, pues, del hogar, housekeeper?
Por mucho tiempo no me recuerdo.
It was for a long time, I don't remember.
All right, now, once you came to the United States and after 1969, what kind of work did you do at that time, ma'am?
Después de que usted llegó a los Estados Unidos en 1969, ¿qué clase de trabajo hizo usted en esa época?
Aquí,
Here?
Yes, in the United States.
Sí,
yes.
aquí en los Estados Unidos.
housekeeper.
Housekeeper.
I'd like now to direct your attention to approximately 1992 or thereabouts. Were you working as a housekeeper in 1992?
Quiero hacerle recordar el año de 1992, más o menos. ¿Usted estaba trabajando de housekeeper en 1992?
Sí,
Yes.
And at some point, did you go to work for a family by the name of the Salingers?
Y en algún momento usted empezó a trabajar por una familia que de apellido los Salinger.
sí.
Yes.
Do you recall when that was approximately?
¿Usted recuerda cuándo fue eso aproximadamente?
Creo que el 92 empecé con ellos.
I think I started with them in 92.
All right, and how long did you work for the Salingers, if you recall?
¿Y por cuánto tiempo trabajó usted con los Salingers, si recuerda?
El 6 de enero cumplí 3 años y entré a 4.
January 6th, I completed 3 years and I started into the 4th.
All right, and do you still work for the Salingers now?
¿Usted todavía está trabajando para los Salingers actualmente?
No,
No.
And at some point, did you leave their employ?
¿Y en algún momento usted dejó su trabajo con ellos?
sí.
Yes.
And when was that?
¿Y cuándo fue eso?
Febrero 10 del 95.
February 10th, 95.
Prior to leaving the Salingers, had you asked for some time off work?
Antes de salirse de donde los Salinger, ¿usted había pedido un tiempo de descanso?
Le dije que me debían una semana de vacación ellos.
Well, they owe me a week's vacation.
Y yo le pregunté a la señora si me daba 2
And I asked the lady if she could give me 2.
y ella dijo
And she said,
no.
no.
And what happened after that, if anything?
¿Y qué pasó después de eso, si es que ocurrió algo?
Ella se sienta en el comedor
She sits down in the dining room
y me dice, nosotros hemos hablado
and she said, we have talked
que
that
me quiso dar a comprender ella que con tanta presión que yo tenía,
she was letting me, trying to let me know that with all the pressure that I had, or that was.
All right, this is non-responsive to the question. Mr. Cochran, you
Let me
want to
ask,
ask
let me ask,
questions?
I'll ask another question.
I'm sorry? It's non-responsive, yes.
You sat down and had a conversation on or about, was it February 6th with Ms. Salinger? That's foundational to the next question.
Sustained. Rephrase the question.
All right. You had a conversation with Ms. Salinger in her living room, was it?
Usted tuvo una conversación con la señora Salinger en su sala,
en el comedor del
in the dining room.
All right. And what happened during that conversation?
¿Qué ocurrió durante esa conversación?
Ella dijo, hemos platicado y he pensado que si te vas, que te vayas por un tiempo hasta que toda esta presión pase.
We have talked that we have decided that if you are going to take off, you can go for some time until all of this pressure is over with.
And what pressure were you referring to at that point?
¿Y a qué presión se estaba refiriendo usted en ese
A
momento?
todos los reporteros que llegaban a la casa.
To all the reporters that would come over to the house.
And the house we're talking about where the Salingers live is located where?
Y la casa de que usted está hablando que de los Salinger, ¿a dónde queda localizada?
El 348 North Rockingham.
Were the reporters in and around 348 Rockingham of some concern to you
Los reporteros que
in
estaban
January and February of 1995?
en el 348 Rockingham le preocupaban a usted en enero y en febrero del 95.
Sí.
Yes.
And if you know, was of some concern to the Salingers, the reporters who were around?
Y que usted sepa también,
Sustained.
Did you have a conversation with the Salingers where they ever expressed some concern about the reporters in and around 348 Rockingham?
Sustained.
Are you aware of how the Salingers felt about any reporters who may have been around the location? Yes. So are you aware?
Usted, I'm sorry, Your Honor, can I have the question read?
Yes. Is there any dispute about this?
Yes.
That the Salingers were concerned about the press coverage?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Reporter, would you read the question back, please?
Are you aware of how the Salingers felt about any reporters who may have been around the location?
¿Usted sabe cómo se sentían los Salinger acerca de los reporteros que podrían haber estado, que estaban alrededor del lugar?
Se sentían mal.
They felt bad.
Did you ever, without you answer this yes or no, did you ever have a conversation with the Salingers with regard to the reporters who came around 348 Rockingham in the months of January and February of 1995?
Puede contestar esto con un sí o con un no. ¿Alguna vez usted tuvo alguna conversación con los Salinger acerca de cómo sentían ellos acerca de los reporteros que llegaban ahí al 348 Rockingham en enero y febrero de 1990?
No.
No.
Now, do you know the gentleman, or you know who this gentleman is to my left, sitting next to Mr. Shapiro here? I'll go ahead and put my hand on his shoulder.
¿Usted sabe quién es este caballero que está sentado aquí a mi izquierda, cuyo he puesto mi mano encima de su hombro?
Mr. OJ Simpson.
Mr.
All
OJ Simpson.
And where do the Salingers live in relation to Mr. O.J. Simpson's home, if you know?
¿Y a dónde viven los Salingers en relación con la casa del señor O.J. Simpson, si usted sabe?
Son vecinos.
They are neighbors.
And you described for us that you'd worked for the Salingers a little more than 3 years. During that period of time, did you ever meet or talk with Mr. O.J. Simpson?
Usted ha dicho que trabajó para los Salinger más o menos por un periodo de 3 años. Durante ese periodo de tiempo, ¿alguna vez usted platicó con el señor O.J. Simpson?
Una vez,
One time.
And when was that?
¿Y cuándo fue esa vez? ¿Cuándo fue?
Mrs. Salinger me pidió el favor que le hablara a Mr. Simpson porque sus nietos querían que le firmara unas pelotas de jugar fútbol.
Mrs. Salinger asked me to talk to Mr. Simpson because she wanted her grandchildren to sign they want him to sign some footballs.
For the grandchildren?
Para
The
los
Salingers'
nietos,
grandchildren?
los nietos de los Salinger?
Ya para Josh Billen.
Yes, for Josh Billing.
That's the names of the two
¿Cuál es
grandchildren?
su nombre?
Josh Billen. Joshua Billen.
Joshua Billing.
All right, was there one grandchild or
En
more?
Graviel Viles.
¿Había más de un nieto?
Sí.
Yes.
What was the name of the other
¿Y cómo se
grandchild?
llamaba el otro?
Grevio. Graviel Billen. Gravi.
Gravi
I don't know.
Billing. I don't know.
All right, do we know how to spell that for the record?
¿Usted sabe cómo se escribe el nombre?
Yo le escribo Graviel en español.
I write it as in Spanish, Gabriel.
That's
Gabriel?
perhaps
Yes.
Yes.
so. All right.
Gabriel.
Now, with regard to these two grandchildren, Josh and Gabrielle, did you in some way try to get the footballs autographed by Mr. Simpson?
Hablando de los nietos, ¿verdad? Josh y Gabriel. ¿En algún momento usted trató de que le pusieran el autógrafo, el señor Simpson, en las pelotas?
Los niños fueron con él, yo los llevé al gate y ellos entraron con Mr. Simpson.
The children went to him. I just took him up to the gate, and then they went inside with Mr. Simpson.
Did he autograph the footballs for them?
I'm sorry?
Did he autograph the footballs for them?
Él le puso los autógrafos en las pelotas ahí.
Sí, estaban muy contentos los niños, sí.
Yes, and the children were very happy, yes.
Right, other than this one time when Mr. Simpson autographed some footballs for the two grandchildren for the Salingers, did you ever talk to him or know him or become his friend?
Además de esta vez, ¿verdad? Que los niños le pusieron el autógrafo ahí. ¿Alguna vez usted habló con él o le platicó a él o se hizo amiga de él?
Nunca.
Never.
You knew he lived next door, however. Is that correct?
Sin embargo, usted sabía que él vivía en la vecindad.
Sí.
Yes.
Now, you have two children that you described for us who live in Los Angeles, do they? Is that correct?
Usted tiene dos hijos que usted nos contó que ellos viven en Los Ángeles, ¿verdad?
Sí,
Yes.
And do you also have any grandchildren?
¿Usted también tiene algunos nietos?
dos niñas.
Two girls.
When you worked here in the United States, would you ever send any money any other place? Becomes a link it up here.
Oral.
Yes.
Cuando usted ha trabajado aquí en los Estados Unidos, ¿ha mandado dinero a alguna otra parte?
He mandado a El Salvador cuando tenía mis otros niños allá.
I have sent it to El Salvador when I still had my other children there.
Did you ever assist any of your other relatives to come from El Salvador to the United States?
¿Alguna otra vez usted ha ayudado a alguno de cualquier otro de sus parientes a ayudarlos a venir para acá? No conteste.
Oral.
Puede contestar.
Mi hermana, traje a mi hermana.
My sister, I brought my sister over.
All right. Now, I'd like to direct your attention, Ms. Lopez, to the date of June 12th, 1994. Do you remember that particular date?
Quiero ahora hacerle recordar, señora López, el día 12 de junio de 1994. ¿Usted recuerda ese día?
Sí,
Yes.
Do you remember what day of the week that was?
¿Recuerda qué día de la semana era?
domingo.
Sunday.
And on Sunday, June 12th, 1994, were you working for the Salingers at that point?
Y el 12 de junio de 1994, ¿usted todavía estaba trabajando para los Salinger?
Sí, señor.
Yes, sir.
And if you recall, were the Salingers at home or in the United States at that time?
Y usted, si usted recuerda que los Salinger estaban en la casa o en los Estados Unidos esa noche.
Andaban por Europa.
They were in Europe.
And did you work on that particular Sunday, June 12th?
Y usted trabajó en ese domingo en particular, el 12 de junio.
Sí,
Yes.
And was anyone else at home with you on that particular date, if you recall?
Y había alguien más en la casa con usted en ese día en particular, si usted recuerda.
solo ellos me dejan cuidándome a mí solita.
They just leave me there taking care of things by myself.
All right, and what were your duties on that particular Sunday? What kind of things were you doing at the Salinger home on Sunday, June 12th?
¿Y cuáles eran sus obligaciones en particular? ¿Qué clase de cosas estaba usted haciendo ese día 12 de junio de 1900?
Como es domingo y es mi día off y ella no me paga mucho dinero por ese día, nomás $25 me da por el día
Well,
off.
because it is a Sunday and it is my day off, and she doesn't pay me a whole lot for my day off. She only gives me $25.
No, hago muy pocas cosas, mantengo ordenada la cocina y cuidarle la perra, porque ella para eso me deja, para que le cuide una perra.
I do very little. I clean the kitchen and I take care of the dog, female connotation. And that's what I do, take care of the dog.
All right, is that what you did on June 12th, 1994?
Bueno, eso es lo que usted dijo el día 12 de junio de 1994.
Sí,
Yes.
And what kind of dog is this?
¿Qué clase de perro es este?
Golden Retriever, something that, I don't know.
Golden Lab, Golden Retriever, something like that, I don't know.
All right. Now, do you recall whether or not in the evening hours of June 12th, 1994, after about 5 o'clock, did you ever have occasion to do anything with the dog that afternoon?
Judge, that's leading, Your Honor.
Rephrase the question. Rephrase the question.
Certainly, Your Honor. Did you have occasion to ever take the dog out of the house after about 5 o'clock on June 12th, 1994?
Same objection.
Sustained.
With regard to this golden Labrador Retriever, did you do anything with that dog on that particular day?
Hablando de este perro dorado, Labrador Retriever, ¿hizo usted algo con ese perro en ese día en particular?
Se le da de comer a las 5 de la tarde y se saca para afuera, señor.
She gets fed at 5 in the afternoon, and then she's taken outside, sir.
All right. Did you feed her at 5 o'clock on this particular day, Sunday, June 12th?
¿Usted le dio de comer este día en particular el 12 de junio de 1994?
Sí,
Yes.
And after you fed her at 5, what time, if you recall, did you take her out after 5 o'clock on that particular day?
Y después de que usted le dio de comer a las 5, ¿usted recuerda que hora la sacó para afuera a caminar en este día en particular?
a las 7.
At 7.
All right, and with regard to the Salinger's home, can you tell the court, jury, where you took the dog? Which part of the Salinger's property did you take the dog at that time?
Objection at Simpson Track 9 moments. Dog out.
I'm asking which part of the property?
I'll allow the
Took it
question.
out.
I understand. She can answer the question.
Answer.
Y I have to translate first. Y hablando tocante a la propiedad o la residencia de los Salinger, ¿en qué parte es de la casa es que usted sacó a la perranda?
La saqué al lado de atrás, de la yarda de atrás.
I took her to the backyard.
All right, I would like it, Ken. Move this around here, by the way.
Mr. Douglas, you want to give us a hand here? Try not to kill the interpreter.
Sure. Guys, on the laser, if we have the location, I'd like to have it put on the screen.
Can we see it before the witness sees it, Attorney?
The council already seen it, so.
All right, see it on council's monitor before we do this.
They shown to the witness now? Let me see. I just like a chance to see it.
All right. Mr. Cochran?
You proceed. All right, Ms. Lopez? Do you wear eyeglasses?
¿Usted usa anteojos?
Sí, sí.
Yes, sir.
Do you have your eyeglasses with you today?
¿Usted tiene sus anteojos hoy?
No.
No.
Are you able to see clearly on the monitor there before you?
¿Usted puede ver en el monitor ahí claramente el que está cerca ante usted?
No.
No.
Do you need to borrow some eyeglasses or
¿Necesita
something?
prestar los anteojos de alguien?
Of course.
Yes, she does. One second.
How about Mr. Glazier's?
Now, once somebody near her age, and I'm looking at the baby, we're really good. Just Mr. Bailey. Try these two pairs.
Que pruebe estos dos pares a ver si...
Let me see what I can see. I know eating too much fish, for it I lost my eyes. I can see con it.
¿Qué dijo, señora?
No miro nada con esto.
I can't see anything with those.
No. Yo no distingo dónde está mi casa en este pedacito.
I can't distinguish where my house is in that small
All right,
portion.
let me show you a larger board.
Maybe she can
Le voy a
step down and
enseñar
take a
uno
look at
más
the big
grande,
screen.
entonces.
Would that help?
It might, let me try this here.
All right.
Try it.
My glasses work fine this morning. Could I show how to use them?
Be my guest. As soon as Mr. Cochran clears his exhibits. I'd like it placed so that Mr. Schuman can get a shot of it.
All Dutch, put it up here.
All right.
The diagram of the photograph on the screen, you gotta describe it, Mark.
Yes,
Mr. Harris?
diagram on the screen. Start.
That is laser disc display D108.
Do you want to wait? All right, Madam Interpreter, can I get you to stand one way or the other because you're blocking there?
I would like to go over and call.
Sorry, this is rather unusual. All right, Mr. Harris, the clerk advised me we'll have to make that defense 1,044. Have to print that as 1,044.
Now, Your Honor, I'd like to, 1044 was it?
Yes.
I'd like to mark this board supports to be aerial view of the Rockingham properties and also the Bundy property as defendants next in order. The G 1045.
1044 or 1045?
If these, one on the screen is 44, Your Honor.
One on the screen is 44. This will be 145, 1045.
1045. Now, Ms. Lopez, can you be able to step down? Can you, first of all,
Yes.
Por favor, y con el permiso de la corte.
can you look at the property on the left-hand side?
Puede mirar la propiedad en
Defendants
la mano
1045.
izquierda de la exhibición de la defensa 1045.
See if you
A ver
recognize
si usted reconoce esta propiedad. Yes. I had the dog up here.
For the record, as is indicated in the back portion of the residence, pointed some grassy area.
Appears to be the lawn area behind 348.
All right, is that, show us where 348 is, the place where you work? Salvagers?
Over here.
All right, show us the house, please.
Enséñanos la casa, por favor. This is their house.
Did you have a particular area of that house in which you lived, ma'am?
¿Usted tenía un área en particular donde usted vivía, señora?
Aquí.
Right here, right here.
No, she's indicating that toward the, I guess, the front of the house, on a wing here, apparently she's pointing as a place where you resided, is that correct?
¿Ese es el lugar ahí en esa ala del lugar donde usted vivía? Así es.
Sí.
Can the other witness indicate that on the diagram, Your Honor?
There was an answer. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I didn't translate it yet.
Mr. Darden, I would suggest if you want to do that on cross-examination with the laser distance, it's the same thing. You can put a mark on that and hold it. But she pointed for the record, and I did see where she pointed.
Thank you.
Mr. Cochran?
Okay. Now, can you show us while you're up at the board there, can you show us?
Let me just ask one question. Mr. Firth, you're getting in the way of Mr. Schuman. You're going to need to slide back. Thank you.
Can you show us where Mr. OJ Simpson lived?
¿Podría mostrarnos a dónde vive el señor OJ Simpson?
For the record, she's identified 360 North Rockingham.
Here, all of this house, all this house. This is the garage, the kitchen, and then the dining room or living room, something like that.
Chair, action motion to strike the second party against its non-responsive.
That's his house.
¿Esa es la casa de él? Yes.
All right, you may resume your seat. Maybe you stand.
Puede pasar a sentarse.
Now, I might ask you, why don't you take another look through those glasses and see whether or not you can pick out anything on the monitor?
Que por favor use nuevamente, trate con los anteojos otra vez y a ver si puede usted.
I'm sorry, Ms.
identificar
Lopez, did you say it's very
algún
hot or it's very hard?
Very hard. Hard.
Hard.
Oh,
Okay.
Muy duro, señor.
Duro, sí.
Very hard.
Hard, duro, yes.
Ahora sí, porque está una lucecita verde, miro.
Now I do because there is a small green light I can see.
All right, will you direct him where to put Mr. Harris will move that small green light. Will you show, tell him where to put the green light as to the Salinger's home?
Indíquele usted dónde tiene que poner la lucecita verde en lo que se refiere a la casa de los Salinger.
All right, Mr. Cochran, you're going to have to move.
Right here.
Right here.
Yep, now you're in our projector there.
Yes, you're right.
All right.
All right.
Right there.
Right there.
All right, is that where that's the Salinger's home?
Esa es la casa de los Salinger.
Sí, señor.
Yes, sir.
Can you point out or have direct Mr. Harris as to where your room, where you lived, when you were residing there with the Salinger?
Puede indicarle, señor Harrison, a dónde era su cuarto, ahí donde vivía usted en la casa de los Salinger.
¿Dónde está la lucecita ahora?
Where the little light is right now.
Yeah, shall we mark that?
Yes.
Sure, can you do that?
Ms. Lopez, is that the location where the arrow was pointing?
Sí,
señor.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right, that's where you reside?
Ahí
And
donde usted-
so that we're clear, Mr. Simpson's home was the home to the left in the picture, is that correct?
Para estar claros, la casa del señor Simpson es la casa que queda a la izquierda.
¿Dónde está la luz ahorita? Sí.
Where the light is right now, yes.
All right, is that, we mark that also?
Yes.
And that's on 1044, Your Honor.
Yes.
Now, so that we're also clear, when you took the dog out in the early evening hours of June 12th, you pointed to an area where you took the dog apparently behind the house. Can you show us again by arrow where that was?
Sí.
Nuevamente, señora, le está indicando la noche del 12 de junio, donde usted sacó a la perra a caminar en el traspatio. ¿Puede indicarnos dónde está esa área?
¿Dónde está la flecha ahorita?
Where the arrow is right now.
That area back there?
Esa área ahí atrás?
You can mark that, Your Honor, also.
Yes.
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 All right, approximately what time was it when you took this dog in that area depicted there on Defendant's 1044?
Objection, estimates.
Just for foundation.
Overrule.
On your.
Aproximadamente nos puede indicar como que horas eran cuando se sacó a la andar ahí en la 1040, exhibición 1044.
Como a las 7, 7 y 10.
Around 7, 7:10.
All right, and then after that, how long were you out in the back part of the house, if you recall,
Y
with the
después
dog?
de eso, ¿cuánto tiempo estuvo usted en el traspatio de la casa, si usted recuerda?
Unos 20 minutos porque juego con la perra.
About 20 minutes because I play with the dog.
All right, was that part of your duties on Sunday?
¿Y esa es parte de sus obligaciones el domingo?
Sí.
Yes.
All right, and thereafter, after you finished playing with the dog, where did you next go?
Y
Ms. Lopez?
después de eso, después de que terminó de jugar con la perra, ¿para dónde se fue?
Para mi cuarto.
To my room.
All right, and that is in the front part of the Salinger's residence, is that correct?
Y esa es en la parte del frente de la casa de los Salinger, ¿así es?
Sí.
Yes.
Okay, now, approximately how long did you stay in your room at that particular time, if you recall?
Y ahora, aproximadamente, ¿como cuánto tiempo permaneció usted adentro de su cuarto esa vez?
Pues allí me estoy porque como ya no tengo que hacer nada.
Well, I just stay there because I don't have anything else to do.
All right, and then did there come a time when you went outside the house again?
Y
Overruled.
luego llegó el momento en que usted tuvo que salir otra vez de la casa.
Salí a las 8:15 para afuera de mi casa.
I went outside of my house at 8:15,
All right. Yeah, maybe approach for just a moment.
approximately.
Maybe approach just a moment, Jerry.
Yes. With reporter or with that? I'm going to take a 10-minute recess to change court reporters right now. I have to change court reporters and I have to give the interpreter a rest. So we'll start again in about 10 minutes. All right, we'll be in recess for 10 minutes.
When, just before we took our break, I was asking you what happened next, and I believe you said that at 8:15 you did something. Do you recall
Antes
that?
de que tomáramos el descanso, le pregunté qué había pasado luego y usted dijo que a las 8:15 usted había hecho. ¿Qué pasó?
Salí para afuera a la calle como aproximadamente de 8 a 8:15.
I went outside to the street between 8 and 8:15 approximately.
All right, when you say approximately, were you wearing a watch that particular evening, if you recall?
Cuando usted dice aproximadamente, ¿usted tenía reloj puesto esa noche, si usted recuerda?
No, señor.
No, sir.
And with regard to the times that of various things that happened that evening, can you tell the court jury, hopefully, how you knew what time it was at various times?
Y tocante a las diferentes cosas que pasaron esa noche, usted le puede decir al juez o, digamos, al jurado, ¿cómo es que usted se fijó a qué horas pasaban diferentes cosas? Un momento, no conteste. Puede contestar.
You can answer the question.
Puede contestar la pregunta.
Porque vi el reloj que tengo en la mesa de noche de mi cama.
Because I saw the clock that I have on my night table by my bed.
And when you saw that clock, do you remember what time it had?
Y cuando usted miró ese reloj, ¿usted recuerda qué hora tenía?
8:05, 8:10, algo así.
8:05, 8:10, something like that.
All right, and at that time, you were still inside the house?
¿Y a esas horas usted todavía estaba dentro de la casa?
Sí.
Yes.
And was it after that you went outside the house after you saw the clock?
¿Y fue después de eso?
Sustain, rephrase the question.
All right, and after you saw the clock at 8:05 or 8:10, what happened then?
Y después de que usted miró el reloj a las 8:05, 8:10, ¿qué pasó después de eso?
Salí a la calle.
I went to the street.
All right, now I want, if we can use the defendant's 1044 there before you. And by the way, do you have some glasses now that assist you in being able to see?
A
Yes,
propósito,
sir.
¿ya tiene usted unos anteojos que le ayuden a mirar? Yes, sir.
And where did you get those glasses?
¿Y a dónde consiguió usted esos anteojos?
La abogada mía me los prestó.
My attorney, female connotation, let me borrow them.
All right, and your glasses are not here today?
¿Y usted no tiene sus anteojos aquí hoy?
No.
No.
All right, so use those glasses and look at the defendant's 1044 on the monitor there.
Que use
And
usted esos anteojos y mire el monitor ahí en la
can you,
prueba del...
Mr. Harris, can you use the little arrow, and can you show us, what part of the property did you go to after 8:10 or p.m. on June 12,
Nos puede
1994?
enseñar ahí con la flecha, ¿verdad? ¿Qué parte de la casa se dirigió usted después de las 8:10, 8:15?
En el monitor aquí
In the monitor here,
no enseña muy bien el gate de la casa de los Salingers.
it's not the gate to the Salinger's house is not shown very well in the monitor here.
All right, the gate in the Salinger's house, is it at the front part of the property?
El gate de la casa de los Salinger está en la parte del frente de la propiedad.
De Rockingham, yes.
It was on Rockingham?
Yes. ¿Queda en la calle Rockingham?
All right.
Sí.
Yes.
And so, and Rockingham is the street out front, is that correct?
Y Rockingham es la calle que queda al frente, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Yes.
Look again at the monitor and see if you see the little green thing and see if you,
Sí.
all right?
Yes.
Is that Rockingham?
Puede ver en el monitor, si usted puede ver, ese Rockingham.
Sí.
Yes.
All right. The gate of the Salinger's home, would that be to the right or to the left?
El gate de la
Sit there
casa de
looking
los Salinger, mirándolo ahí como le está mirando, ¿está a la derecha o a la izquierda?
Como lo miro aquí, está a mi derecha.
As I see it here is to my right.
All right. And so it's not shown in that particular photograph, is that correct?
O sea, no está demostrado en esa fotografía en particular.
No.
No.
Do you recall whether or not you go outside that gate?
Objection, that's the meeting.
Sustain.
What did you do with regard to the front part of the property? Where did you go? You can tell us that.
¿A qué hizo usted tocante a la parte del frente de la propiedad? ¿A dónde fue usted? Porque no nos dice eso.
Enfrente del gate, digamos, si hubiera un gate en la entrada de driving way, me
Let's
parece.
say if there was in front of the gate, if there was a gate in front by the entrance of the driver, there's where I stood.
All right. And what street would you be standing on at that
¿Y en
point?
qué calle estuviera usted parada ahí?
En la Rockingham.
On Rockingham.
All right. And do you recall, Ms. Lopez, how long you remained out at that location, out in front of the Salinger's home on Rockingham? How long you stayed there?
¿Y usted recuerda, señora López, cuánto tiempo se quedó usted ahí parada en ese lugar enfrente de la casa en la calle Rockingham, en la casa de los Salinger? ¿Recuerda cuánto tiempo permaneció ahí?
Unos 5 minutos.
About 5 minutes.
All right. And while you were out there, out on Rockingham, did you ever have occasion to see any cars parked on Rockingham
You mean,
Objection is leading, Your Honor.
It's not leading. You see any cars parked? It's not leading.
y mientras usted estuvo ahí parada en la calle Rockingham, ¿tuvo la oportunidad de ver algunos carros estacionados ahí?
Estaba un carro blanco, Bronco.
There was a white car, a Bronco.
All right, and where was this white Bronco parked at the time you saw it?
¿Y a dónde estaba este Bronco blanco estacionado el momento en que usted lo vio?
En el 360 Rockingham.
360 Rockingham.
I want to show you an exhibit that's previously marked. I might, for the record, Your Honor.
Le voy a mostrar unas pruebas historias que han sido previamente marcadas.
Plaintiff's exhibit, Your Honor, 62A and B specifically, I'll ask her to take a look at it. I'll put it on the board here, Your Honor.
Vamos a poner aquí
All
en
right,
el
and Mr.
pizarrón.
Cochran, you're going to have to use the podium because the microphone, we're having difficulty picking you up as far as the tape is concerned.
All right, Your Honor.
Now, before we show these photographs, they are leading. And they indicate positions which the witness is not testifying to.
All right, I think we need some foundational questions. I'll sustain that as a foundational objection.
With regard to,
And the record reflects that the witness is
She's looking in that direction, yes. All right, Mr. Cochran?
all right.
But we have a videotape of all of this.
Ms. Lopez, with regard to this Bronco that you described for us, what color was it?
Hablando, señora López, del Bronco que usted ha descrito, ¿de qué color dice usted que es?
Blanco.
White.
And did you notice anything unusual about that Bronco as it was parked at the curb?
¿Y usted notó algo fuera de lo usual acerca de ese Bronco?
Sustain, rephrase the question.
No conteste, no hay pregunta.
Can you describe for the court how the Bronco was parked?
¿Puede usted describirle a la corte cómo es que estaba, al tribunal, cómo es que estaba parqueado ese Bronco, estacionado ese Bronco?
Un poquito chueco.
A little bit crooked.
And can you describe what portion of the Bronco was crooked?
¿Puede describir qué parte del Bronco es que estaba chueco?
Me parece que la parte de atrás.
I think it was the back side.
And is there a gate on the Rockingham side of Mr. Simpson's property?
Y hay un gate, una puerta ahí en la parte del frente de la casa del frente de la calle, en la entrada de Rockingham.
Sí.
Yes.
And was this Bronco vehicle that we've been talking about, was it parked anywhere near the curb, near that gate?
Sustain. Sustain.
All right, let me ask you.
Sustain. I've sustained it, Mr. Darden.
Let me ask you this way. Where was the Bronco parked in relation to the gate in the Rockingham Street?
¿A dónde estaba el Bronco estacionado en relación con el gate ahí en la calle Rockingham?
Un poquito adelante del gate.
A little bit in front of the gate.
All right, Your Honor, may I now show the witness 62 page?
Objection, Mr. Foundation.
Mr.
Wait.
We have just one at a time, not all three of them, Your Honor.
Mr. Darden,
I believe I was in the process of objecting.
before you were rudely interrupted by your co-counsel.
I'm sorry.
Once again,
That was inartful of me.
But there's still insufficient foundation as far
What's
as the
insufficient?
description of the vehicle and the exact location in which it's parked. Which side of the street,
Little.
how she can identify a particular vehicle, lots of foundation issues remain.
Speaking with your counsels about that.
But I don't have a jury here.
Well, still, the rules get bad habits, Your Honor.
That's true.
All right. Now, with regard to this white Bronco that you said was parked a little bit askew, have you ever seen that Bronco before that particular day?
Hablando de ese Bronco que usted dice que estaba estacionado un poco chueco, ¿usted había visto ese Bronco antes de ese día en particular?
Mucho tiempo.
A long time.
Okay, and if the court, can you see this defendant's 1045 here? Can you see that from where you are?
¿Puede ver esta exhibición?
Sí.
And
Yes.
if you need to put your glasses on,
No.
do you do that?
Si necesita ponerse los anteojos, ¿por qué no se los pone? No.
No.
All right,
No.
can you tell us or step down and show us?
Puede
show the
bajarse
court
y mostrarle al juez, a la
Which
corte.
¿Me da
direction?
permiso, señor?
Do you give me permission, sir?
Yes.
Sí. It was over here, right here.
She's indicating an area right
Yes.
outside the gate. In which direction was the Bronco headed, if you could show us? Which way was the Bronco?
¿Para qué dirección estaba mirando el Bronco, si usted recuerda?
Para arriba de la Rockingham.
Up Rockingham Way.
Up Rockingham Way. Then I would like if the clerk please just to ask about 62A and B. Can you see from where you are what's been marked as plaintiff 62A and B?
Usted puede ver de donde usted está sentada la prueba de la defensa 62A y B. No, not very well.
All right, can you put your glasses on?
Puede ponerse los...
Tengo que bajarme, señor.
Yes, but I have to go down, sir.
All right.
Yes, you may.
Sí, puede. Thank you.
I want you, first of all, to look at
Primero,
62A.
quiero que vea la 62A.
Can you look at 62A here?
¿Puede ver la 62A aquí?
Sí.
Does that,
Yes.
does that photograph appear to you to reflect the way the Bronco was parked
Ese,
about 8:15 on June 12, 1994?
Sustain. Sustain. Question is, what does this depict?
What does 62A depict to you?
¿qué le demuestra a usted la 62A?
Está chueco el carro, por
That the car is parked crooked.
All right, and will you look at 62B?
Mire a la 62B.
Está lo mismo.
It's the same.
All right, and will you look at 62D?
¿Puede ver a la 62D?
¿Ese?
This one?
Yes.
Sí.
Sí.
Yes.
We look at 62E.
62A.
Sí.
Yes.
All right, and you may resume the stand.
Puede pasar a sentar. Okay, thank you.
Now, Ms. Lopez,
Ahora, señora López.
when you're looking at the vehicle on that particular night, is that the way the vehicle appeared to you?
Usted vio el vehículo esa noche en particular, así es como le parecía a usted que estaba el vehículo.
Objection, very good. No.
Puede contestar.
Sí, señor.
Yes, sir.
All right, now, after you saw this white Bronco parked as you've described,
Mr. Cocker, before you go any further, Mr. Pavlik just came in. I asked the bailiffs to have him wait outside.
fine here.
Pardon. Thank you.
Tell us what happened after that.
Díganos qué pasó después de eso.
No le entendí, señor.
I didn't understand, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. After you saw the Bronco as you've described it here, tell us what you did next, if anything.
Después de que usted vio el Bronco, como usted nos ha indicado acá, díganos qué hizo, qué pasó después de eso. Usted.
Yo no le entiendo lo que me quiere preguntar.
I don't understand what you're trying to ask.
All right? You were out, where were you when you saw the Bronco?
¿A dónde estaba usted cuando primero vio el Bronco?
En la calle.
On the street.
All right? Did there come a time when you left the street and went someplace else?
¿Y llegó el momento en que usted se fue de la calle y se fue a otra parte?
A mi cuarto.
To my room.
And that's back to the same room you've described on 1044 there?
Y ese fue el mismo cuarto que usted nos mostró en el 1044, en la prueba 1044 ahí?
Sí.
Yes.
All right? Now, after that, after you went back to your room, tell us what happened after that, if you recall.
Después de eso, después de que usted volvió a su cuarto, díganos por favor qué pasó después de eso.
Después que volví a mi cuarto,
After I went back to my room,
After you went back to your room,
después de que usted volvió a su
me
cuarto,
puse a mirar televisión.
I started to watch television.
all right? And after you watched television for a while, did you have occasion to go back outside at any time after that?
Yes.
Do you recall?
Y después de que usted se fue a mirar televisión, tuvo la oportunidad de volver a salir para afuera otra vez.
Salí para afuera a las un poquito después de las 10.
I went outside a little after 10.
All right. Now, before you went outside at 10 o'clock, before you went back outside after 10 o'clock, did you ever hear anything or see anything in or around Mr. Simpson's residence after you went back to your room after 8:15? No? It's not.
I didn't hear the ruling of the court. Or rule. Okay. I'm sorry. Can I have the question repeated?
Before you went back outside at 10 o'clock, Did you ever hear anything or see anything
Después de que usted,
around Mr. Simpson's residence?
después de que usted salió a la calle otra vez después de las 10 de la noche, ¿usted escuchó o vio algo cerca de la casa del señor Simpson?
De las 10 de la noche.
At 10 at night?
At any time after you went back to your bedroom?
En cualquier momento después de que usted regresó a su cuarto.
Como desde las 9, como a las 9, vi a Mr. Simpson que se fue en el carro negro que iba con otro pasajero, yo no sé quién era.
A little around 9, a little after 9, I saw Mr. Simpson that left in the black car with another passenger, I don't know who.
All right, and did you see where Mr. Simpson went after 9 o'clock in this black car?
¿Y usted vio para dónde fue el señor Simpson después de las 9 en el carro negro?
Iba para la Rockingham, para abajo, como buscando Sunset.
He was going down Rockingham, like looking for Sunset.
All right, which direction would that be?
¿Qué
If he
dirección
came out,
sería
which
esa?
gate did, strike that, which gate did he come out of?
¿De qué gate salió él?
De la Rockingham.
The Rockingham.
And did you see which gate, which way he turned on Rockingham?
¿Y usted vio para qué lado dio la vuelta en Rockingham?
A la izquierda.
To the left.
All right. And did you lose sight of him at that point?
¿Usted lo perdió de vista en esos momentos?
Sí, porque él pasó para abajo.
Yes, because he went down the street.
And the passenger who was in his car, do you know who that passenger was?
¿Y el pasajero que iba en el carro, ¿se sabe quién era ese pasajero?
No, yo no lo vi.
No, I didn't see it.
And was that,
Didn't see him.
okay, was that, I was going to ask you, was that a man or a woman?
¿Era hombre o mujer?
Yo no lo vi.
I
Bien.
didn't see
Yo solo
it.
le vi el pelo amarillo. No supe
I
quién
just
era.
saw the blonde hair or yellow hair.
Blonde hair?
Pelo rubio,
Rubio.
blonde.
All right. Now, after this happened, did anything else happen after that was of an unusual nature?
Después de que esto pasó,
Anything attract your attention?
I'll restate the question. After that, did anything else attract your attention?
después de eso, ¿algo más le llamó la atención?
Como a las 9:30 antes oí que pasaron pasos como que iban por el... Yo no, como estaba en mi recámara, no puse atención para dónde iban, pero oí pasos de zapatos que iban para abajo. No sé si en la propiedad de Mrs. Salinger o en la propiedad de Mr. Simpson.
Well, around 9:30 or before, I heard steps, and I was in my bedroom, and I don't know which way they were going. I don't know if they were on the Salinger's side of the property or on Mr. Simpson's.
And can you describe for the court these steps, how they sounded?
¿Y puede usted describir para el tribunal esos pasos de zapatos, cómo sonaban?
Como zapato corriente.
Like just a regular shoes?
All right, and were you able to see anyone walking either on the Salinger's property or Mr. Simpson's property?
¿Y usted pudo ver a alguien caminando, ya sea en el lado de la propiedad de los Salinger o de los Simpson?
No.
No.
And what did you do when you heard these footsteps?
¿Y qué hizo usted cuando escuchó estos pasos?
Tuve miedo porque como la señora de trabajo, Mrs. Salinger, no tenía fence en ese tiempo. Y tuve mucho miedo por la razón de que cualquiera se podía entrar, como iban rápido para adentro, me dio miedo. Y me agaché la cabeza de mi ventana porque si me paro me miran así. Entonces me agaché así y pasé mi cortina muy suavecita.
Hold on. Madam Interpreter, did you get most of that?
Yes. I was afraid because at that time the Salingers didn't have a fence or a block wall over there, and I went back really fast inside to my bedroom, and I ducked down like this because I was really afraid, and then I came back up. And
All right, when you say you ducked down, where?
No, the question was, what did you do? I was afraid, I looked out, and then I ducked down. That's responsive to the question. Next question.
Describe for the court how you ducked down and where you were.
Que por favor dice que que por favor que le explique al juez, le enseñe al juez en qué forma es que usted se agachó así para abajo.
Me agaché un poquito así,
I
señor
bent
juez.
over a little bit like this, Your Honor,
Y pasé la cortina con mi mano muy suavecita para que no hiciera ruido, para que no me oyeran.
and I closed the window with my hand very, very slowly, so not to make any noise, so that they wouldn't hear me.
No window,
No window,
la cortina.
the curtain.
All right. Is there a window in the place where you live in the Saligers home? Is there a window that faces out on Mr. Simpson's property?
El lugar donde usted vive ahí en la casa de los Salinger tiene una ventana que mira hacia la casa de la residencia del señor OJ Simpson.
Pues yo la miro de mi ventana de mi cuarto, pero está de lado.
Well, I see it from my bedroom window, but it's on the side.
And which side does that window face, if
¿Y
you
qué
recall?
lado mira esa ventana, si usted recuerda?
Para el lado del gate de Mr. Simpson de la Rockingham.
To the side where the Mr. Simpson's gate is on Rockingham.
Can you look again, use your glasses and look at the monitor there?
Si puede ver otra vez el monitor con sus anteojos otra vez.
Can you see that window near the arrow or where you live?
Que si usted puede ver esa ventana cerca de la flecha, ahí donde usted vive.
Sí.
Yes.
And which window is that? The
¿Y
one
cuál
displayed
ventana
there
es
by the
esa?
arrow?
¿La que está por la flecha?
Sí.
Yes.
Right now, after you ducked down and you were afraid, what else happened? What happened next?
Después de que usted se agachó porque tenía miedo, ¿qué más pasó? ¿Qué pasó?
Oí otra vez que llegó un carro.
I heard again that a car came by,
Oí cuando cerraron la puerta.
and I heard when they shut the door.
Y oí que Mr. Simpson hablaba con alguien por unos segundos.
And I heard that Mr. Simpson talked to somebody for a few seconds.
Did you recognize Mr. Simpson's voice?
¿Usted reconoció la voz del señor Simpson?
Sí.
Had you heard his voice before?
Sustain, rephrase, let's go back.
All right.
A little foundation.
Before this date of June 12th of 1994, had you ever heard Mr. Simpson's voice before?
Antes de la fecha del 12 de junio de 1990, ¿usted había escuchado la voz del señor Simpson antes de esa fecha?
Muchas veces porque él jugaba con sus niños y Nicole en la yarda platicaba.
Many times because he played with his children and in the yard with Nicole, and they talked in the yard.
And so, did you hear Mr. Simpson's voice when this car came back, as you've described?
Entonces usted escuchó la voz del señor Simpson cuando usted dijo que regresó este carro.
Sí.
Yes.
And did you recognize that voice?
¿Y usted reconoció esa voz?
Sí.
Yes.
And where were you when you heard Mr. Simpson's voice?
¿Y a dónde estaba usted cuando escuchó la voz del señor Simpson?
En mi cuarto.
In my bedroom.
All right, and do you know about what time of evening that was at that time?
¿Y usted sabe como qué horas de la noche eran más o menos?
Más o menos como unos 15 para las 10 o algo así.
More or less 15 to 10 or something like that.
Now, before that, did you ever hear these footsteps anymore that you described for us earlier?
Y después volvió a oír estos pasos que usted nos dijo que había escuchado antes, más temprano.
No.
No.
Were you still afraid after you heard Mr. Simpson's voice?
¿Usted todavía tenía miedo después de que escuchó la voz del señor Simpson?
No.
No.
Ya me sentí más segura cuando sentí que él llegó.
No, I felt safer when I felt that he came back.
All right, now, after that, what next happened after that? After you heard Mr. Simpson's voice, if you recall?
¿Y qué pasó luego después de eso, después de que usted escuchó la voz del señor Simpson? Después de que regresó, si te recuerda.
Ya salí, era ya cuando fueron las 10, tuve que sacar a la perra de vuelta para afuera.
Well, by then it was 10 and I had to take the dog back outside.
This is the golden retriever that you described for us?
¿Es la Golden Retriever que usted nos dijo antes?
Sí, señor.
Yes, sir.
And can you describe for the court again where you took the dog on this occasion?
¿Y usted puede explicarle al tribunal nuevamente a dónde se llevó el perro esta vez, esta otra vez?
La saqué para enfrente de la Rockingham.
I took her in front to Rockingham.
Was there a gate on the Salinger's property in front of Rockingham?
¿Hay un gate enfrente de la casa de los Salinger en la Rockingham?
No.
No.
And can you describe for us where you took the dog on this occasion? And if you want to refer to the monitor, you can show us on that.
Si nos puede enseñarnos en el monitor esta vez a dónde es que llevó la perra.
Pues me tendré que parar, señor
I would
juez,
have
porque
to
no miro
stand,
aquí.
Your Honor, because
Sure.
I'll take this down there, and we'll refer to 1045. The clerk, please.
okay.
Point out before the court.
Right here.
And está un big tree aquí.
There's a big tree right here and here.
Dog walk all over this place
And
over here.
over here, the dog walked all over this area.
Indicating the front lawn area of that residence.
1045, South.
Yes.
And now I want to ask you, were you wearing a watch at this point at all?
Y ahora le quiero preguntar, ¿usted tenía reloj puesto hasta estos momentos?
No, señor.
No, sir.
And you described this as being somewhere around 10 o'clock. How did you know that?
Y usted dice que eran como las 10 en punto. ¿Cómo sabe usted eso?
Un poquito después, yo he dicho un poquito antes, después de las 10, porque yo vi el reloj en mi cuarto y eran las 10.
I said a little after 10 because I saw the clock in my bedroom and it was 10.
All right. After you saw the clock in your bedroom, did you do anything inside the house before you came outside?
Después de que usted miró el reloj adentro de su casa, ¿usted hizo algo adentro de la casa antes de salir?
Sí, señor.
Yes, sir.
Can you describe for us what things you did before you came outside and tell us each thing that you did?
¿Nos puede decir qué hizo usted antes de salir de la casa y puede explicarnos o describir cada una de las cosas que hizo?
Puse a hervir un poco de agua para un té.
I put a little bit of water to boil for some tea.
All right. And after you did that, did you drink the tea at that point?
Bueno, y después de eso, ¿usted se tomó el té en esos momentos?
No.
No.
All right. Did you do anything else inside the house before you went outside?
¿Usted hizo algo más adentro de la casa antes de volver a salir?
Le quité un collar que le ponen a la perra porque se muerde toda.
I took off this collar that they put on the dog because she bites herself.
And busqué el leash.
And I looked for the leash.
Le puse el leash a la perra
And I
y salí para afuera.
put the leash on the dog and I went outside.
When you said the dog bite itself, or you made a motion with your hands, can you describe what the dog would do and why the dog had this collar on?
Porque
Sé que usted hizo una moción, ¿verdad? Que la perra tenía su collar ahí, que es porque se muerde. Entonces, ¿puede describir qué es lo que hace la perra? Y cómo...
El señor dice que tiene alergia, se muerde toda cuando se le quita ese collar, como que le pica todo el cuerpo.
The gentleman says that she has allergies and she bites herself all over when they take away that collar.
All right. So you took this collar off before you went
Entonces le
outside?
quitó ese collar antes de sacarlo para afuera.
Sí, señor.
Yes, sir.
And then you described for us that you found the leash, and can you tell us where you found this leash, where the leash was?
Y entonces después usted dice que encontró el leash. ¿Nos puede explicar a dónde encontró el leash?
Sí.
Yes.
And what, if anything, did you do with the leash?
¿Y qué hizo usted con el leash, con la correa?
Se lo pongo a la perra y la saco.
I put it on the dog and I take her out.
All right. And you described for us the area where you took the dog out. Do you recall? Strike that. When you went outside with the dog, leaving your room, did you have occasion to look at the street on Rockingham Street?
Cuando usted salió para afuera con el perro, después de salir de su cuarto, usted miró la calle, en algún momento la calle que había en la Rockingham Street.
Se mira bien. Sí.
Yes. Your Honor, can I inquire? I didn't
Yes,
understand.
you may.
Dice, ¿no se mira bien?
Se mira muy bien la calle.
Or you could see the street just fine.
And you could see Rockingham from the location you described for us in the Salinger's yard, is that correct?
Judge,
Sustain.
Well, where were you able to see the street from?
¿De dónde pudo usted ver la calle?
¿Dónde estaba la perra cerquita del árbol?
where the dog was close to the tree.
And were you able to see this Bronco vehicle?
Y usted pudo ver este vehículo Bronco.
Sí.
Sustained. Answer stricken.
Were you able to see any cars parked out on Rockingham there?
¿Usted pudo ver algún carro estacionado ahí en la calle Rocky?
Sí.
Yes.
And what cars did you see parked out there, if any?
¿Y qué carro vio usted
Oral.
estacionado ahí, si usted vio algún carro?
El Bronco.
The Bronco.
And if I were to show you again, 62A, et cetera, please back
Le voy a
up.
enseñar.
Foundation objection, this is needed.
Wait a minute. Objection, no foundation, objection, this is bleeding.
Which of the two are we going to have? Roll call vote?
I don't think we're going to have either shortly.
Sorry, Leonard,
Twice in the same session, counsel.
I have a right to object, correct your honor. I might assert that right now. No foundation. It's bleeding.
Sustained.
With regard to.
On the foundational part of it.
When you looked and you saw this Bronco, can you tell the court whether or not the Bronco appeared to be parked the same way it was parked when you saw it at 8:15 that night?
Cuando usted,
Your honor, objection.
Overruled.
cuando, usted,
You can answer the question.
cuando usted volvió a ver este Bronco, ¿le puede usted explicar a su señoría, al tribunal, que si estaba estacionado en la misma manera que usted lo vio estacionado a las 8:15?
Sí, señor juez.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, and you're not like to show 62A?
All right.
You have previously identified 62A, B, D, and E. And I'd like you to look, if you can see those, step down with the first
Que por
position.
favor,
Yes.
con el permiso del juez, que ya identificó 62A, B, D y E.
And again, I'd like you to look at when you saw this Bronco vehicle at the park of the curve at Rockingham, did it appear, as it appears there in those photographs, 62A, B, D, and E, and you saw it after 10 o'clock,
Cuando-
June 12, 1994.
Bleeding, your honor, objection.
Overruled. You can
Dice
answer the
que
question.
si usted estaba así estacionado el vehículo cuando usted lo vio en las exhibiciones de 62A, B, D, E, estaba estacionado en la misma forma cuando usted lo vio a las 10:15 de la noche, el día 12 de junio de 1994.
Sí.
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Lopez, if you know about how long were you outside with the dog before you next went someplace else?
Señor López, ¿y usted sabe cuánto tiempo permaneció usted afuera con la perra antes de que usted fuera a otra parte?
Muy poquito tiempo.
A very short time.
All right, and you watched the dog and you had him on a leash during this period of time, did you?
¿Y usted miró al perro y lo tenía con la correa todo este tiempo en el leash?
Sí.
Yes.
All right. And when you left, at that point, did you go someplace else?
¿Y en ese momento usted se fue a otra parte?
No, me fui para adentro de mi casa.
No, I went back inside my house.
All right, and when you left to go back inside your house, was the Bronco still parked at the curb at the same way you'd seen it earlier?
Y cuando usted,
That's not me.
y cuando usted se entró para dentro de su casa, el Bronco todavía estaba estacionado en la misma forma que usted lo vio que usted lo había visto. Estaba estacionado igual cuando usted se entró a la casa.
Sí.
Yes.
And then you went back inside your house, and where did you go at that point inside the house?
Y luego usted se fue para dentro de la casa otra vez. ¿A dónde se dirigió en esos momentos cuando volvió a entrar a la casa?
A mi cuarto.
To my bedroom.
All right. Did you go to your bedroom at that point?
¿Usted se fue a su dormitorio en esos momentos? ¿Se fue a su dormitorio en esos momentitos?
Ya, le pongo el collar a la perra de vuelta, le quito su leash y ya la dejo y ya me voy a mi cuarto.
I put the collar back on the dog, I take off the leash, and I leave her there, and then I just go back into my bedroom.
And after you did this and you went to your bedroom, what happened after that? What'd you next do?
Pues después de que de que hizo eso y regresó a su dormitorio. ¿Qué más es que hicieron? ¿Qué más?
A ver televisión.
Just watch TV.
All right. Do you know about how long you watched television before something else happened?
Usted sabe,
Sustain. First question.
Attorney Garrett, did you watch television for a period of time?
usted miró televisión por un periodo de tiempo.
Sí.
Yes.
And do you know about how long you watched television?
¿Y usted sabe como por cuánto tiempo miró televisión usted?
No.
No.
At some point later that evening, did you ever hear any more voices?
En algún momento más.
Sustain.
Did
Anything else attract your attention?
Did anything else attract your attention? Sounds like a good question to me. Anything else attract your attention later that evening?
¿Algo más le llamó la atención a usted más tarde esa misma noche?
Sí.
Yes.
And do you know when that was, approximately when that was, ma'am?
¿Y usted sabe cuándo fue eso? Aproximadamente cuándo fue eso, señora?
Como a las 11
About 11
de la noche,
p.m.
oí la voz. Oí, no distinguí lo que el señor Simpson decía porque oí que habló.
I
pero no
heard the
sé-
voice and I
no sé lo
couldn't
que dijo.
distinguish what Mr. Simpson was saying, but I heard the voice, but I don't know what he said.
All right, and where were you when you
Yeah, that's not
responsive?
that's approximate time.
Said 11 o'clock.
Four lines of dialogue.
Sustain.
What portion, Your Honor?
Let's stricken the part that's non-responsive after 11 o'clock.
All right.
When was that? Then what was that?
At 11 o'clock, you heard some conversation. Will you tell us what was that, what you heard at that point?
A las 11 de la noche usted dice que usted oyó una conversación. No puede decir qué era eso.
Yo no oí lo que hablaba, yo solo oí que hablaron.
I didn't heard what was said. I just heard that they talked.
And you heard Mr. Simpson's voice, did you?
¿Usted escuchó la voz del señor Simpson?
Sí.
Yes.
Did you recognize any other voices that you heard that night, at that time?
¿Usted reconoció alguna otra voz que usted escuchó esa noche en
No.
esos momentos?
No.
No, no.
All right. What happened after you heard Mr. Simpson's voice? What happened next?
¿Qué pasó después de que usted escuchó la voz del señor Simpson? ¿Qué pasó luego?
Ya quedó callado.
Then everything was quiet.
And after everything was quiet, where were you inside your house?
Y después de que
Inside
todo
the
quedó
house.
callado, ¿a dónde estaba? ¿En qué parte de su casa estaba usted? En la casa de los Salinger.
Desde esa hora estoy en mi cuarto todo el tiempo.
At that time, I'm always in my bedroom, all the time.
Now, after that, did something else draw your attention after you had heard Mr. Simpson's voice and after a period of time passed?
Después,
Your Honor, the witnesses testified that everything was quiet.
Sustain.
Did there come a time when things weren't quiet in and around your residence or Mr. Simpson's residence?
Leaving, Your Honor.
Ruled.
You come a time?
después llegó el momento en que las cosas ya no estaban tan pacíficas ahí cerca de la casa del señor Simpson, cerca de su casa.
Como a las 12 de la noche, oí que platicaban hombres en el lado de la Rockingham.
About 12 midnight, I heard that men that were talking on the Rockingham side.
Y el perro de él, un negro que tiene, yo no sé cómo se llama, ladraba mucho.
And his dog, I don't know what his name is, but it's a black dog that was barking a lot.
What time was this?
¿Qué horas fue esto?
Como a las 12 de la noche.
About 12 midnight.
And do you know that dog's name?
¿Y usted sabe cómo se llama ese perro?
No, señor.
Was
No,
that Mr.
sir.
Simpson's dog?
¿Ese es el perro del señor Simpson?
Sí, señor.
How did you know from Mr. Simpson?
She lived next door for 3 years, and so I think she, well, I'm sorry.
Overruled.
Okay.
Answer stand. We
No,
also
sir.
have a black dog.
You heard the dog barking?
¿Usted escuchó el perro ladrando?
Ladraba y lloraba, señor.
He barked and he cried, sir.
And how long did you hear this dog barking?
¿Y por cuánto tiempo escuchó este perro ladrando?
Como un cuarto para la una, como 15 para la una.
About 1:45, about 15 to 1.
And these voices that you'd heard, that you said near Rockingham, how long did those voices continue?
Y estas voces que usted oyó cerca de la Rockingham, ¿por cuánto tiempo continuaron estas voces?
Yo no puse atención porque como no estaba, no me interesaba saber la hora, yo no miro reloj.
I didn't pay attention because I wasn't interested I'm not interested in watching the time. I didn't see the clock.
Tal vez a las 12:30 o 12:40, yo no.
Maybe
yo no,
12:30, 12:40,
no sé.
I don't know.
So that, to be clear, you first heard the voices about midnight?
Para aclarar, usted primero escuchó las voces a las 12 de la medianoche?
Sí.
Yes.
And to the best of your recollection, what was the last time that you heard these voices
Y lo
on
mejor
that early morning?
que usted recuerde, ¿cuándo fue la última vez que usted escuchó esas voces ahí en la madrugada?
Como a las 12:30, digo yo, más tarde.
12?
12:30.
Around 12:30, I think.
All right, and at the time that you last heard these voices about 12:30, do you recall whether or not the dog was still barking during this time?
Y cuando la última vez que usted escuchó las voces a las 12:30, ¿verdad? Todavía él estaba ladrando el chucho.
Sí.
Yes.
And can you tell us whether or not you ever saw any persons outside near Rockingham when you heard these voices?
¿Y usted puede decirnos si usted vio algunas personas afuera ahí en la Rockingham cuando usted escuchó estas voces?
Yo tenía mucho miedo, yo no estaba abriendo mi ventana porque oí los pasos primero, yo no.
Was very scared and I wasn't about to open my window when I first heard the footsteps. I don't.
You didn't hear it? Did you ever?
Sustained. We're asked the question. Answer stricken.
Certainly. Did you ever, when you heard these men's voices about 12 midnight, did you ever look outside and see any men outside near Rockingham?
Assumes it's men, too.
All right, I thought you said men, but when you heard these voices outside, did you ever look outside and see anyone?
Cuando escuchó estas voces y cuando usted miró, espió para afuera, ¿usted miró a alguien?
No.
No.
Did you ever look outside and see the dog at any time after you heard the dog start to bark?
¿En algún momento usted miró para afuera y vio al perro cuando el perro empezó a ladrar?
No, que tenía mis cortinas cerradas, yo no miro para afuera.
No, because I had my curtains closed. I don't look outside.
All right. Can you tell us about how long the dog continued to bark, if you know?
¿Podría decirnos por cuánto tiempo permaneció el perro ladrando, si usted sabe?
Overruled.
Puede contestar.
Por mucho tiempo, señor.
For a long time, sir.
Now, did you continue to remain awake during this period of time, or did you fall asleep, or what happened?
¿Usted continuó despierta durante todo este periodo de tiempo, o se durmió, o qué pasó?
Después me dormí.
I fell asleep later.
All right, and can you tell the court what time it was that you fell asleep that particular night?
¿Le puede decir usted al tribunal como que horas eran cuando usted se durmió esa noche en particular?
Yo no vi el reloj que horas me dormí, porque yo me dormí.
I didn't see the clock what time I fell asleep.
All right, do you have any idea of what time it was when you fell asleep at all?
¿Usted tiene alguna idea qué horas eran cuando usted se durmió? Un momento.
Overruled. You can answer.
Puede contestar.
Como las 2 de la mañana, quizá.
About 2 a.m., I think.
All right, you weren't looking at your clock at that point.
¿Usted no estaba mirando su reloj en ese momento?
No, señor.
No, sir.
All right. When you fell asleep, do you remember whether or not there was any noise from the dog barking at 360 Rockingham just before you fell asleep, if you remember?
Antes de que usted se durmiera, ¿usted se recuerda si escuchó que el perro estaba ladrando en el 360 Rockingham?
Sí.
Yes.
All right, now, after you fell asleep, sometime after 2 o'clock in the morning, do you remember what time you woke up on Monday, June 13th, 1994?
Después de que se durmió como a las 2 de la mañana, ¿verdad? ¿Usted recuerda a qué hora se despertó el día siguiente, el 13 de junio?
Me levanté a las 8 de la mañana porque llegaban los jardineros, esa hora llegan los jardineros.
I got up at 8 in the morning because the gardeners came. That's what time the gardeners come.
And do the gardeners come They come every Monday at that time back in June of 1994?
Y los jardineros llegaban todos los lunes a esas horas, ahí en junio.
A veces llegan un poquito más, 15 minutos más tarde o 15 minutos más temprano, pero a las 8 ellos están ahí y hacen mucho ruido con la sopladora, por eso se despierta uno.
They come 15 minutes earlier or later, but they're there at 8 o'clock, and they make a lot of noise with the blower.
All right, and the blower, the sounds awakened you, is that correct?
Y la sopladora, el ruido de la sopladora es lo que le despertó a usted, ¿así es?
No, me tocaron, no, me levanté porque estaban los jardineros ya, ¿verdad? Me levanté.
No, well, I got up, you see, because the gardeners were already there.
All right. And after you got up, did someone come to your door at some point that morning?
Y después de que usted se levantó, alguien llegó a su puerta, ¿verdad?
¿Alguien tocó el timbre?
Somebody rang the doorbell.
And
¿Y?
this, the doorbell that this person rang, do you know, or can you describe for the court where that was in relation to where you lived, the portion of the house that you occupied in the Salinger's home?
Y el timbre, ¿verdad? Usted puede explicarnos en qué parte de la casa está en relación a donde usted vive, ¿verdad? Y en la casa de los Salinger.
En la puerta en la puerta donde entran los señores.
It's at the door where the owners of the house go in.
All right. Are you able, if you look at the monitor again, are you able to find that door at any place on the monitor there?
¿Puede encontrar esa
It's
puerta
1044.
en algún lugar, en el monitor ahí en...
Ay, esto está muy chiquito,
This
señor,
is
yo no miro eso.
way too small, sir. I can't see that.
All right. So when someone was at the door, what did you do?
Y cuando alguien llegó a la puerta, ¿qué hizo usted?
Abrí la puerta. Primero pregunté quién es.
I opened the door. Well, no, excuse me. First I asked, who is it?
¿Quién es?
Who is it?
Y me dijo, soy el policía de Los Ángeles.
And he said, I am Los Angeles Police.
Could you see?
I am a policeman from Los Angeles.
All right. Could you see this person at that point?
¿Usted podía ver a esta persona en esos momentos?
Entonces abrí la puerta.
Then I opened the door.
All right. When you opened the door, what did you see, if anything?
Pero cuando usted abrió la puerta,
Did you see a male or a female?
¿qué vio usted? ¿Vio algo, una mujer o un hombre?
Un hombre.
A male.
And at that point, did you have some conversation with this person?
¿Y en ese momento usted habló con esta persona?
Él me dijo, soy el detective Mark Ferman.
He told me I'm Detective Mike Furman.
Y me enseñó
Well,
una...
just a moment. Did he say what? Could you say that name again?
¿Puede
Ay,
decir
yo
ese
no lo puedo
nombre otra
pronunciar
vez?
muy bien,
I can't pronounce it very well.
pero usted lo pronuncia mejor que yo.
You can pronounce it better than I can.
May we approach just a moment, Your Honor?
Madam Reporter, you ready? All right, thank you, counsel. Mrs. Lopez, when this police officer identified himself to you, can you tell me what name he gave you?
¿Podría usted decirme el nombre que él le dio a usted? ¿Qué nombre le dijo a usted?
Me dijo Mark Freeman.
He told me Mark Freeman.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And what did he say to you after he said his name is Mark Fairman?
¿Y qué le dijo? Le dijo a
Ms.
usted.
Clark?
And Ms. Lewis in this situation, Your Honor, they both objected.
Yeah, I'm whispering with you.
There's objection, Your Honor, mistake.
Doesn't look terrific. Mr. Cochran, would you continue, please?
Thank you very kindly. What did this individual say to you after that, ma'am?
¿Y qué le dijo este individuo a usted después de eso, señora?
Se identificó con una plaquita.
He identified with a small plaque.
Your Honor.
Oh, it's not a spot. It's responsive.
Overruled.
He identified with what?
Con
Se
una,
identificó
con
con
una,
una qué?
con una cosa, se identificó con algo en las manos. Yo no,
With a thing, he identified himself with something in his hand.
Was it a badge?
Era
Yes.
como una insignia?
sí.
Yes.
That was leading.
Well, I'm trying to understand what it was, Your Honor.
No, you said, was it a badge? You've
All
been
right, let
asking
me
you
ask you.
describe what it was.
Okay. Strike.
It's stricken, but I know what the next question and answer is going to
Will
be.
you describe what it was he had in his hand?
¿Puede describir usted lo que él llevaba en las manos?
Como una plaquita.
It was
Como una-
like a little,
Como como cuando uno tiene la licencia de manejar, una cosita así. Yo no, yo me
like when one has a driver's license, like something like that. Your Honor,
Yes,
interpreter's comment.
yes.
When she said a little plaquita, perhaps I should have interpreted a badge instead of a small.
Well,
Can you-
Plaquita, I heard the witness say Plaquita, and we can invite Dr. Reinoff from UCLA to tell us what a Plaquita is. Thank you. We'll proceed.
Can you describe this plaquita anymore for us?
¿Puede usted describirnos qué quiere decir con esta plaquita? ¿Puede escribirnos más qué quiere decir con la plaquita?
¿Qué tenía su nombre?
That it had his name on it.
Do you have any pictures on it?
¿Tenía
Pictures?
fotos?
Yo no me fijé.
I didn't notice.
All right, and after that, tell us what happened after that.
¿Y qué pasó después de eso?
Como yo no lo yo miro bien para afuera y él no me miraba bien para adentro.
Well, because I can see fine outside, but he could not see me well inside
And what happened?
Porque es una puerta de metal.
because it's a metal door.
All right, and then did something happen with regard to that?
Él
¿Y
me,
después algo
sí,
pasó con
él
la
me
puerta de
dijo,
metal? Yes.
Señora o mujer,
He told me, lady or woman,
yo no le miro su cara.
I don't see your face.
And then what happened after that?
¿Y qué pasó después de eso?
Yo le dije, perdón,
I said, excuse me,
ahorita le abro la puerta.
I will open the door for you right now.
All right, and did you open the door at that point?
Y luego abrió la puerta en esos momentos?
Sí.
Yes.
All right, and then after you opened the door, what happened then?
Y después de que le abrió la puerta, ¿qué pasó luego?
Él me preguntó que si yo era la dueña de la casa.
He asked me if I was the owner of the house.
What did you respond?
¿Y qué le contestó usted?
Le dije, no.
I said no.
And then what happened after that?
¿Y qué pasó después de eso?
Dije, soy la housekeeper.
I said I'm the housekeeper.
Dice, ¿cómo te llamas?
And he said, what is your name?
And what did you say?
¿Y qué le dijo usted?
Pero dije, Rosa López.
I said Rosa López.
All right, when you were talking to him, was he writing any of this down?
Y cuando usted está hablando con él estaba apuntando a estas cosas?
No.
No.
All right, after you gave him your name, what happened after that?
Y después de que usted le dio su nombre, ¿qué pasó después de eso?
Me pidió permiso para pasar al lado de atrás de la casa.
He asked me for permission to go to the back side of the house.
And can you look again at that monitor, or you might have to step down and show us? Strike that. Did you give him permission to go to the back side of the house?
¿Y usted le dio permiso de entrar al traspatio?
Pues sí le di porque era la policía.
Yes, I did because it was the police.
And did he leave the door and go someplace at that point?
Y él se retiró de la puerta y se fue a otro lugar en ese
Se fue
momento.
para atrás de la casa.
He went to the back of the house.
And with the back of the house, would that be the area in which you had walked the dog earlier in the evening in the rear portion of the Salinger's residence?
Y esa sería la misma área donde usted había caminado al perro anteriormente esa misma noche, anteriormente en la parte de atrás de la casa de los Salinger.
Sí.
Yes.
Did you go back there with this man at that point?
¿Usted se fue allá atrás con este hombre en esos momentos?
No.
No.
Do you know, if you know, was he with anyone else at this point, or was he by himself, if you could tell?
Si usted sabe, ¿él iba con alguien más o iba solo en esos momentos?
Iba con otra persona.
He was with another person.
Was that a male or a female?
¿Era hombre o mujer?
Hombre.
Male.
And where was this man who was with him?
¿Y quién era este hombre que iba con usted? Que iba con él, perdón.
O dijo que era otro policía.
He said it was another policeman.
And when you gave them permission to go in the backyard there, did they leave your sight at some point?
Y cuando usted le dio permiso de ir al traspatio ahí, ¿se perdieron de su vista en algún momento?
Sí, pues se fueron para atrás y yo no los seguí.
Yes, well, they went to the back and I didn't follow them.
All right. And did, at some point thereafter, did they come back or have further conversation with you? I think I said yes or no. It's foundational.
Y en algún momento después regresaron, después de ir allá atrás, regresaron.
Regresó el primer señor que me tocó la puerta.
The first man who knocked on my door came back.
All right. And did you have a further conversation with him at that point?
¿Y usted habló más con él en esos momentos?
Sí.
Yes.
Tell us what you said and what he said.
¿Podría decirnos qué dijo usted y qué dijo él?
Él me dijo muchas gracias.
He said, thank you very much.
En el momento ese le dije yo, me dijo, decirle a los jardineros.
And at that time I said, and then he said to me, tell the gardeners.
Cualquier cosa extraña que encuentren en el jardín, que no la toquen.
That if anything strange that they find in the yard or in, not to touch.
Call the police.
Call the police.
All right. Did he say anything else to you at that point?
Él le dijo algo más a usted en esos momentos.
Después de eso, cuando yo estaba muy, como miraba tanto policía y tanta cámara y tanta cosa, yo le pregunté, ¿qué pasa?
After that, because I had seen so many police officers and so many cameras and so many things, I asked, what happened? What's happening?
Él le dijo, algo horrible ha pasado al otro lado.
And he said, something horrible has happened on the other side.
Yo le pregunté, ¿está Mr. Simpson muerto o herido?
And I asked him, is Mr. Simpson dead or wounded?
Y dice, no.
And he said, no.
And then,
Entonces,
what happened then?
yo
¿Qué
le
pasó
dije,
luego?
me dijo, why?
And then I said, and then he said, why?
Porque anoche, muy noche, yo oí voces, oí hombres que platicaron
Because
al lado del jardín.
last night, very late, I heard voices. I heard men that were talking in the back of the yard.
You told this detective that?
¿Usted le dijo eso al detective ahí?
Sí, señor.
Yes, sir.
All right. And when you told him that, what did he say?
Y cuando usted le dijo eso a él, ¿qué dijo él?
Él me dijo que si habían oído gritos de mujer o alguna mujer, voces de mujer.
And he asked me if I had heard a woman's screaming or screams of a woman and voices, women voices.
And what did you say, if anything?
¿Qué dijo usted?
Dije, no, eran hombres.
I said no, they were men.
Él me preguntó que si era la voz de Mr. Simpson.
And he asked me if it was Mr. Simpson's voice.
What did you say?
¿Y qué dijo
Yo le
usted?
dije, no, yo no sé.
I said no, I don't know.
Then what happened after that?
¿Y qué pasó después de eso?
Después de eso él me dijo, te vamos a mandar a la policía para que le des el testimonio a la policía.
And after that he told me we are going to send the police so that you can give testimony to the police.
And after he told you that, did any police officer from the Los Angeles Police Department ever come out to interview you after that?
Y después de que le dijo eso a usted, ¿algún oficial de policía de Los Ángeles vino a hacerle alguna entrevista a usted después de eso?
Todavía los estoy esperando, digo.
No, I'm still waiting for them, tell him.
Now, this interview with Detective Mark Fairman, what time of morning was that, if you recall?
Esta entrevista con el detective Mark Furman, ¿a qué horas de la mañana fue eso? Si usted recuerda.
Como a las 8:30.
About 8:30.
That's on what date? Monday, June 13th?
¿Y eso fue en qué fecha? ¿El 13 de junio, día lunes?
El lunes 13 de junio.
June the 13th, on Monday.
And while you were having this conversation with this gentleman, were the gardeners still there at that point?
Cuando usted estaba platicando con este caballero, ¿los jardineros todavía estaban ahí?
Sí.
Yes.
At any point while you were talking with this individual, did you ever see him write down any notes of any kind?
Cuando en algún momento que usted estaba platicando con este señor, él lo vio que él hacía apuntes en algún momento.
No apuntó nada.
He didn't write anything down.
Did you have any further conversation with him after he told you that someone would be coming to interview you from the Los Angeles Police Department?
¿Platicó más con él usted después de que le dijo que iban a mandarle? más policías que iban a llegar otros policías a hablar con usted?
Ya no volvieron.
They never came back.
Now, you said that at some point you saw police officers in and around the Rockingham residence. Is that correct?
Usted atestiguó en algún momento que usted vio oficiales de policía cerca y alrededor de la calle de Rockingham, ¿verdad?
Había mucha policía.
There were a lot of police.
Were these like, can you describe these cars? Were they black and white cars?
¿Puede describir los carros? ¿Eran blanco y negro?
Sí, de los otros de un solo color también.
Yes, and then the other ones that are all one color too.
Now, did you ever have occasion on Monday, June 13th, to go out to Rockingham and see whether or not there were any vehicles parked out there at the curb at Rockingham near Mr. Simpson's home?
Usted tuvo la oportunidad de salir el lunes 13 de junio ahí en la calle Rockingham para ver si habían algunos vehículos estacionados ahí en la calle Rockingham cerca de la casa del señor Simpson.
Había muchos carros parqueados, sí.
There were many cars parked there, yes.
Did you see the Bronco at any time that day?
¿Usted vio el Bronco en algún momento ese día?
Ahí estaba parqueado todavía.
It was still parked right there.
You say it was still parked right there. If you were to look with the Constitution again at 62A, B, D, and E. And you saw the Bronco on June 13th, 1984. Was it parked in the same way that you'd seen it the night before after 10 o'clock?
Las fotografías que está viendo ahí, las 62A, B, D y E, que si usted vio que el Bronco que usted había visto estacionado ahí el día 13 de junio de 1994 estaba estacionado en la misma forma que usted lo había visto la noche anterior, como a las 10 de la noche.
Sí.
Yes.
Maybe put you on.
Sure. We are going to take our recess for the afternoon at this time. Ms. Lopez, we're not finished yet. Unfortunately, the other side still has to ask you questions. Mr. Cochran has not finished asking you questions. I'm going to order you to come back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Mr. Cochran will make arrangements for you for the evening. Come back here tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. All right? Thank you. All right, you may step down.
Mr. Lance,
Yes.
¿que le puedo decir algo, señor?
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yo tengo mis tickets comprados para mañana a las 11 de la mañana.
I have my tickets purchased for tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the morning.
All right, we'll make sure that that gets changed.
Vamos a asegurarnos que eso cambie.
We'll make
Gracias,
sure.
muy amable.
Thank you,
Agradezco
very
mucho.
kind. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
You're right.
Yes.
Your Honor, I have here Sylvia Guerra, Guerra. Could the court kindly order her back for 9 o'clock tomorrow morning?
All right, Ms. Guerra, do you understand English, ma'am?
A little.
All right, you're ordered to return here tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Thank you, ma'am. All right,
Would you also order Ms. Lopez not to discuss her testimony with anyone except her lawyer and his agents?
yes, I forgot to advise you, Ms. Lopez, please don't discuss your testimony with any other person other than the attorneys in the case. All right, thank you, ma'am.
Order her not to contact or attempt to contact Ms.
No,
Guerra?
it's not necessary. All right.
You think it's ridiculous tomorrow? Thank you.
All right, Ms. Lopez, you may step down. Thank you very much, ma'am. And Mr. Cochran, would you find out the travel arrangements, and we'll have to make adjustments for that, and have my clerk make that adjustment for us. All right, let's have Mr. Can we have Mr. Pavlik brought in, please?
Her lawyer, your,
Yes. Mrs. Hamburger, I'm going to order you to return tomorrow morning as well, 9 o'clock. All right, with client in tow. All right, thank you, Madam Interpreter. All right, Ms. Hamburger, do you want to escort your client out? Yes, Madam Interpreter, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Thank you. All right, can we have Mr. Pavlik, please? All right, Mr. Schuman, thank you.
Well, we can find our inquiries into the statements and notes of Rosa Lopez, or
Well, that's what I'm most interested in at this point. Let's just keep the inquiry down to specifically what our 1335 we're in the midst of right now, and we can move on to other things at another time. We only try to do 53 things at a time here. All right, Mr. Pavlik, good afternoon, sir. Would you come forward? Mr. Pavlik, my understanding is that you've been the investigator for the defense for the past several months, correct?
Since June 14th, yes, sir.
All right, are you aware of any statements that have been made or any reports or any notes regarding this witness, Rosa Lopez, other than the two statements that have been turned over?
Other than the two statements, no.
No, I asked if these statements were made under oath. He's not an officer of the court.
Well, he is here making representations to me. Do you have a license as a private investigator?
I work under a private investigator's license.
All right, then I'll have to have him put under oath then.
Frank Brandon, you do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give will cause testimony before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please state, spell your first and last names for the record.
No, you can stay right there. Mr. Pavlik, you can just stay right there.
William George Pavlik, P as in Paul, A, V as in Victor, E-L-I-C as in Charles.
All right, with regards to the witness, Rosa Lopez, my understanding is that you conducted 2 interviews of her?
Yes, sir.
All right, and we now have reports that are dated July 29th and what is it, August the 18th?
That's about right, yes, sir.
All right, are there any other notes with regards to interviews of Rosa Lopez?
When you say notes, I'm not sure what you
Any
mean.
rough notes, anything you wrote down, anything handwritten?
I may possibly have some notes in regards to the statement that I took.
All right, do you have any tape recordings of any statements?
I tape recorded the first statement, which was the July statement.
All right. All right, Mr. Pavlik, where are these items, these notes and tape recordings?
I believe that it's either in the office or at my residence when
All right. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to order you to come to court with those items.
I shall do my best to get those items.
All right, no, don't do your best. Have them here tomorrow.
I shall have them here tomorrow, Your
All
Honor.
right, thank you. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock.
Thank you, sir.
All right, counsel, we will stand in recess. We'll take this matter up at 9 o'clock. All right, thank you all.